Welcome to me, where suspenseful, thrilling, and mysterious stories will draw you into a world where the lines between reality and fantasy seem to blur. When the night falls, when all the sounds gradually quiet down, leaving only your own heartbeat and breathing, that's when these stories begin. Tensions, unsolved mysteries, moments that will make you hold your breath in fear or curiosity, all are waiting for you ahead. Find a comfortable seat, dim the lights, and let this sound guide you on a journey that is not for the faint of heart. I want each of you to leave a comment sharing where you are in the world. And if you are enjoying the episodes, don't forget to give a like and subscribe to the channel now. Relax. Are you ready? If so, join me in the first story right now. A living mirage. Life, as funny as it sounds, flows in a circle. And I, personally, never liked circles. I'm more of an octagon kind of person. Sally snorts at her own thoughts, but groans when the noise is muffled by the hand that is covering the lower part of her face. It smells of sewerage, grimy, disgusting, and somewhat musty. Familiar, heart-wrenching, stomach-churning, brain-rotting, but familiar. Maybe a little too familiar. His movements are sluggish, as usual. His joints crack with every step, and Sally fears he might die on the spot. Although she is certain nobody would miss good old Donovan Peters if he were to suddenly disappear. They slowly creep into the familiar room, announcing their arrival with every creak of rotten wooden floor. Sally's mind wistfully returns to her life before this. Was there even one? Her memory falters. Why can't I remember? Her eyes scan the room frantically, sweeping over the unmade bed, splintered floor, and boarded-up window. Her home. Her cell. Her hands strain against the rope, shaking from the terror of having returned to this fearful place. NPA. Her protest is muffled, much like her snort from earlier. No, no, this will not do. His voice is croaky and barely clear. If she had not known his actual age, she might have thought him to be on the verge of expiration. His chest presses against the back of her head as he forces her inside. His shove is aggressive, and when she falls to the floor, his laughter ricochets off the walls. She barely manages to get to her knees when the door is slammed, locked and barred. Donovan's sinister laughter continues to echo as the sound of his footsteps retreats. Sally shakes her head, forcing tears back into her eyes. She won't. No, she refuses to lose any more of them for that monster. I told you, it won't work. A doe-eyed beauty emerges from the darkest corner of the room. Sally's temper flares, and she springs to her feet, charging at the beauty. It was you, wasn't it? Her voice is cold enough to slice through any warmth in the room, and the beauty lowers her eyes. Sally tugs on the rope around her wrists until it unties, and then uses it to press down onto the other girl's neck. Layla Angelou can rot for all I care. The voice in her head is loud, and she hisses. The girl claws at the rope around her throat and falls back against the wall. Splinters pierce her skin, but she refuses to make a sound. It's always you. Why? Sally's eyebrows are pulled together furiously, and her sharp blue eyes have turned into ice. Don't lie to me. Sally's outburst receives no reply, and her arms finally slump enough for the girl to breathe. But she does not remove the rope. A sob racks through her chest. I thought that this time, at least this once, you'd let me go. Go where? The girl rasps, rubbing her throat. Her luscious black hair cascades down her back and shoulders, perfectly framing her figure. Her green eyes hold a certain complicated depth, and her plump pink lips are pulled into a miserable pout. Sally pulls away completely. Somewhere, nowhere, anywhere but here. She turns her back on the girl and throws the rope aside, massaging her bruised wrists. We can make this work, Sally. I promise. If you just try, you'll see. Please, why can't you just stay with me? Sally ignores her. This is a conversation they've had before. A fruitless one. Once she soothed the sting on her wrists, she turns around to face the girl again. Her eyes trail down to her throat, and her stomach churns at the fresh burn marks. She knew her throat was already sensitive. She can admit when she was out of line. I'm sorry, Layla. Her head nods in the direction of the girl's neck, but the girl waves it away quickly. Not a problem at all. Happens to us all. They remain in silence for a good 5 minutes before Layla walks towards the bed and starts to fix the bedding. She hums a soft tune as she works, sounding rather cheerful. Sally hates it. How can she be so content? In a situation such as this, I kept some dinner for you. Layla pulls a corroded metal bowl from below the bed and nudges it towards Sally, who reluctantly nears to accept it. The half-eaten apple in the bowl is bruised and looks less than appetizing, but she sends Layla a grateful smile and devours it. I'll try again someday. You know that, right? Something scratches at the window, scaring the two. Layla nearly trips over her own feet as she rushes to hide behind Sally's figure. Not that Sally has any height advantage over her. Sally pats Layla's hand on her shoulder, comfortingly, before removing it and placing the bowl on the ground. She clamps the apple core in her hand and crouches closer to the window. Something about this feels too familiar, and Sally falters in her steps. Something about the entire night feels way too familiar. Yes, she's been in this predicament for quite some time. But the déjà vu she's experienced tonight has been one too many for her to just ignore it. The boards used to cover the window start to blur, pixelate. Sally glances over her shoulder at Layla to confirm if she's just imagining things. But the sheer confusion on Layla's face says it all. Everything is real. Sally stops in front of the window and gasps when she sees the image within the pixelated particles. A scene, much like the one she's just experienced with Donovan, is mirrored in front of her. A mirage? That's not possible. She reaches forward, holding her breath as her fingertips breach the surface of the image before her. Sally turns around to face Layla, but her breathing stops completely when Layla's figure has disappeared. Her eyes scan the room frantically, but all evidence of Layla having been there has disappeared. Layla? She tries to call, but her voice gets stuck in her throat. Sally turns towards the mirage again and falls backwards when her eyes connect with those of Layla. Only this time, Layla's eyes are a forest green, with a small red fire burning inside her pupils. Pain creeps through her body as her back makes contact with the floor. Layla opens her mouth, and what comes out is a cruel cackle. Inside the mirage, Sally can see another version of herself being shoved into the room and then having a fight with Layla. But the difference is that there are two versions of Layla. The one is pressed against the wall by the other Sally, and the other one is standing to the side and laughing hysterically, like she is watching a form of comedy. Oh, Sally dear. The cackling Layla turns to face Sally through the mirage, and the pixelated particles of the window starts to shimmer. Sally crawls backwards when Layla's hand pierces the surface, and pale, bony fingers clamp around the frame of the window. I remember this. Her voice is muffled by uncertainty, but she manages to push herself up from the floor. I remember all of this. She says this to herself as confirmation. Her eyes dart around the room, and then back at where Layla is still dragging herself through the pixels. She never understood her unsanctioned hate towards Layla. But suddenly, it all makes sense. Every memory stabs at her mind, and for once, she understands what is happening. She's always hated Layla because she knew exactly what she was. That's why Layla does this. Sally runs towards the bed and collects the rope from the ground in the process. I will escape! She ties the rope around one of the springs at the bottom of the bed and bites into her hand, hard enough to draw blood. Tears spill from her eyes as she smears her blood all over the rope, and then uses her index finger to write 3 simple words on the bottom of the mattress. You must escape. She stares at the words, her stomach churning from another feeling of déjà vu. I've done this before? She grits her teeth painfully before reaching up to add something else. You must escape, Layla Sally crawls out from under the bed and eyes Layla's half-emerged figure fearfully. Without a second longer to lose, she runs to the door and starts banging frantically. With every second she's banging, Layla crawls further out of the pixelated window, laughing comically at Sally's terror. What's all the ruckus about? Donovan barges into the room, but Sally ducks underneath his arms and runs with her every fiber to reach the front door. The stairs complain under her weight as she trips down them, but she doesn't stop. "Oh, Sally." Layla's voice sing-songs from behind her, and she shudders. Sally bumps against torn furniture and leaps over newspapers strewn all over the floor, but her eyes stay focused on the black, bolted front door. Her hands shake as she jiggles the locks around, but they refuse to budge. "Come on, Sally. I just want to play." "That's right. We just want to play." Donovan's voice has turned more laryngeal, and Sally's skin crawls. "Please, no." She ruffles the old newspapers on the table beside the door, searching for the keys. But her movement stills when she notices an odd peculiarity in all of the newspapers. Although they are of different dates and already discolored, they have one thing in common: a picture of her. Although they have been edited and computer-generated to show her at different ages, they are all her. Her head spins, and bile pushes up her throat. Sally backs away from the table until her back bumps against a kitchen counter. A voice inside of her yells at her to run, but her feet stay plastered to the ground. Layla's comical laughter has turned into sinister screams, and Sally can finally hear Donovan's heavy footfalls approaching the staircase. She shakes her head to clear her thoughts and almost releases a sigh of relief when she notices a pair of rusty keys peeking out from below a chipped teacup. Sally grabs the keys and rushes to the door, willing her trembling hands to still and complete the task. One lock clicks open, then another, and finally, the last one. Sally nearly sags to the floor in relief, but manages to keep herself poised enough to pull the door open. She runs out of the door, down the 2 stone steps, and onto the asphalt ground. She manages to run all the way to a broken-down truck when Donovan's voice booms in the form of a roar. She ducks behind the truck and presses her back securely against it. Her chest rises and falls erratically, and she makes sure to slow her breathing as to not make a sound. She lowers herself to the ground and pulls her knees to her chest, begging for a door of any of the surrounding houses to open and for someone to come to her rescue, but no one does. Ever. The silence that follows Donovan's roar is deafening. Layla has also stopped cackling, and not even birds can be heard. This is the first time Sally scans the houses around them, only to notice the degraded state every one of the houses are in. They are old and decrepit. There is no possibility that anyone can live in these houses. Her heart stutters, and her entire body goes cold. She turns her gaze towards the side mirror of the truck and finds a terrified version of herself staring back. Her eyes widen at the words scrawled onto the mirror in old, dried blood. Not safe. Follow arrows. Her lips part, but no oxygen enters. She manages to push herself to her feet, albeit shakily, and glances around the truck. Donovan is standing in the doorway, looking around calmly. Behind him, the low hum of Layla's singing fills the air. Run, little mouse. Run, little mouse. Let's all have some fun. Goosebumps spread across the entirety of Sally's body, and she hisses before pushing against the surface of the truck and taking off in the direction of the first arrow that's drawn beside the writing on the mirror. Layla's laughter fills the air, but Sally ignores her as she pushes her legs and pumps her arms harder, harder. Her eyes scan the surrounding area as she runs, looking for any sign of an arrow. The arrows lead her all the way to an abandoned parking lot of a large business. Her eyes fleet around frantically, but she sees no more arrows. With Layla's humming from behind as her motivation, she runs into the building and ducks below the entrance gates. But when she stops in front of the doors of the elevator, her entire body freezes. From the surface of the elevator door, albeit blurry due to the deterioration, she can see two glowing orbs smiling back at her. Those orbs are illuminated by a red fire burning from the middle of the black pupils. Poor little mouse. Layla leans over Sally's shoulder and skims her cold fingers across her cheek. It's so easy to lay a trap for a mouse who loves its cheese. She laughs hysterically and leans onto Sally for support. This is not the end. Sally bites back, curling her hands into fists. Layla stares at her through the reflection of the elevator door before laughing comically. You're right, dear. This, she waves her hand around as if showcasing her to an audience, is simply the beginning. And we, she points a finger at Sally and then back at herself. We are going to have a lot more fun together. Sally rips herself away from Layla and spins around, but Layla tuts, snaps her fingers, and then slaps her palm against Sally's forehead in one swift movement. There's no rush, dear. With her words, Sally's world starts to spin, and her eyes flicker before she is consumed by darkness, and the next thing she sees is the familiar, cold, creaking hallway of Donovan's apartment. He forces her down the hall with his chest pressed against the back of her head and his hand clamped securely around the lower half of her face. Life, as funny as it sounds, flows in a circle. And I, personally, never liked circles. I'm more of an octagon kind of person. Sally snorts at her own thoughts, but groans when the noise is muffled by the hand that is covering the lower part of her face. It smells of sewerage, grimy, disgusting, and somewhat musty. Familiar, heart-wrenching, stomach-churning, brain-rotting, but familiar. But for the first time, it seems just a little too familiar. Merry Christmas. Ho, ho, ho. Merry Christmas. Jessica squints her eyes and bites down on her pinkish lower lip. Ho, ho, ho. Merry Christmas. Jessica smiles, wrinkles forming around the corners of her mouth. She shakes her head down and chuckles. Darling, what's the matter? What is going on in that big head of yours? She gets up from her leather office chair and walks to her husband to squeeze his large, cold hands. Jessica's husband has never been so melancholy on December 24th. I'm worried, he shares. About what? Tonight. Jessica was alarmed by her husband's words. In the 4 centuries, her husband has been delivering presents and joy to children all around the world. She has never heard him say those words. What is there to worry about? The elves are organized. Everyone has been getting along. The reindeer are so excited for tonight and full of energy. Rudolph's nose is shining brighter than ever. I think we could shut off the headlights on the sleigh to save energy. Jessica, it's not that. Is it him? What? The Grinch? I do not know what he's up to right now. Jessica searches for the answer in her husband's eyes, but all she sees is her reflection. She drops his hands. Now you are starting to worry me. You need to tell me what is going on, Jessica says sternly. I simply do not know. I just feel unusual. Is it me? Jessica asks. Nicholas doesn't answer. Mr. Claus? Mr. Claus? Jeannie the elf asks aggressively. Nicholas perks up from his dazed state and looks around. All the elves have stopped their work activities to observe the overweight man, normally jolly, sulk in his sleigh. The elves exchange hushed whispers, coated in concern. Not only is this moment instilling fear in them, but the Christmas operation is running behind. Why have you stopped? We need to get going. We need to be in New Zealand in 9 minutes, Nicholas yells. The elves shake at the thunderous volume of his voice and immediately finish packing the last few presents into his enormous red bag and feeding the reindeer their carrots. Nicholas has been delivering presents, or coal for the naughty children, for a few hours now. By the time Nicholas and the reindeer got to Amsterdam, Rudolph's nose was getting dimmer, and he was feeling slight fatigue. But they had to keep going. Nicholas was not singing holiday tunes as they flew in the crisp, frigid air in Croatia. He even dropped the wrong present, a gaming console, in the wrong house in Nigeria. and had to fly back to little Kemi's house to switch it with the correct one, a skateboard. The reindeer could sense the disorganization and gloominess from Nicholas. Nicholas knew that tonight was more delicate than usual because he was making mistakes for the first time in centuries. His stomach was full of nerves and milk and cookies. 11:55 p.m. CST, Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. Nicholas rolls forward and lands on his feet in an upright position, like an Olympic gymnast. His chunky black boots leave faint imprints on the beige carpet. The Christmas lights are still on inside the Alotzi family home, providing light to guide him towards the Christmas tree. He places 3 gifts: a bicycle for Kechi, 8, a basketball hoop for Leon, 10, and a limited edition comic book for Josiah, 12. Nicholas smiles. A sense of peace washes over him, a feeling he has not felt all day. Josiah is the oldest, and he recently started to lose vision in his right eye. It has changed how he plays with his friends and how he learns his favorite subjects in school. But he was an exceptionally good boy this year. He deserves that comic book. That's what it's all about for Nicholas. Bringing joy to children. Nicholas looks around the cozy living room, looking for cookies and milk. With nothing in sight to quench his thirst or hunger, he walks towards the kitchen. This family is well off, he thinks to himself. Big white cabinets, stainless steel appliances, large square footage, pristine, clean, quiet. Milk and cookies wait for him on the large rectangular wooden dining table. Nicholas sips on the milk. He can see the family's new silver barbecue grill sitting outside the back door through the sliding door windows. The right side of the sliding door looked damaged. The white siding is bent and cracked, so much for pristine. As he put the tall glass of milk down, his head became hot. Sweat started to form from underneath his red hat. Something is not right, he thought. The milk was hot, steaming as if someone had just warmed it up just before he got there. Police! Put your hands where we can see them. Before Nicholas could turn around, he was tackled to the ground by an unknown man. Get off of me! He screams in agony. Nicholas, unable to lift his head to see ahead of him, hears more footsteps. An army of footsteps come from several positions in the kitchen. Doors swing open. Wooden chairs are toppled over. Bright flashlights illuminate his face. Nicholas feels his breath weaken and starts heaving. All right, officer. No need to suffocate him, a voice says. Nicholas feels a weight lift off his back and is finally able to lift his head. Officers dressed in thick, dark-colored bulletproof vests, masks, weapons, and boots surround the kitchen. St. Nicholas, you are under arrest for trespassing, breaking and entering, animal abuse, and violating the labor code. 2 officers appear beside him to bring him to his feet. and start to cuff his hands behind his back. "These are preposterous claims!" Nicholas exclaims. "Sir, anything you say may be used against you in court. You have the right to remain silent." "I am not a criminal. I am Santa Claus." Nicholas wiggles frantically in his cuffs. "If you arrest me, millions of children will not get their Christmas presents. I need to finish my job. Can I speak to your superior? Who is responsible for placing these charges against me?" A sinister silence comes. The officers turn their faces away from the now red-faced Nicholas towards a corner of the kitchen. The pantry, it opens with a creak, and a quiet, cold breeze sweeps through the kitchen. A trapped cry can be heard in the large pantry. Nicholas's eyes cannot believe what he is seeing. A mother, stepfather, and 3 kids, the Alozi family, are bound together, not with the joyful spirit of Christmas, but by dry, brown rope. Their mouths taped shut. Not a word from their lips, but their eyes do the talking. Desperation and fear reeks from the sweat that covers their heads. Nicholas screams and tries to free himself from the restraint of the handcuffs, but the officers hold him back. "I wouldn't try that if I were you," a familiar voice sounds, but Nicholas cannot quite put a finger on it. The unknown figure's boots make loud thuds on the floor as they walk closer to Nicholas. The other officers part themselves like the Red Sea and make way for them. A cap shades her face in the low-lit kitchen, but Nicholas can make out her shiny, blonde hair. "Cindy!" She slowly lifts her head. "Hello, Santa Claus?" "Cindy Lou, what is the meaning of all of this?" Nicholas asks. "Little Cindy Lou, who, from Whoville, sports a black jumpsuit and an unauthorized police badge. Her eyes are black with deceit and evil. A distant image from the small girl who loved Christmas. Cindy, please, remember the day the Grinch stole Christmas? How painful that was for you and your town. Imagine the millions of children experiencing the same thing this Christmas right now. Is that what you want?" Nicholas pleads. Cindy leans closer to Nicholas. "It's not about what I want, Claus. Are these officers even legitimate? Cindy Lou, answer me. And why tie this poor family up on Christmas Eve?" The eyes of the smallest Alozi child, Kechi, beg for freedom. "Actually," Cindy Lou checks her watch, "it's Christmas Day, and it's about what he gets." Nicholas smells a grisly scent, and immediately his eyes open wide. A masked figure appears from a clump of officers. He gently removes his mask and reveals his skin, all green, and teeth, all yellow with termites. "I should have known better," Nicholas whispers to himself. "Merry Christmas, Santa Claus." Nicholas is enraged. Veins start to pop from his neck. Why so sad, Santy? What happened to the holly jolly fat man with a white beard that everyone knows and loves? Let me go, now. No, 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 no can do, Santy. Nicholas uses his large body to push the officers, if they even are real Canadian authorities, off him. They fall to the ground, but Nicholas is still surrounded by several angry officers, ready to take him down. Cindy waves her gloved finger, instructing the officers to pounce on Father Christmas. A struggle ensues, and Nicholas is forced to the ground again. He fights with all his will, yelling and kicking with the most power an almost 2,000-year-old man could. "Stop resisting," one officer demands. "You need to comply, sir," another one says. "Punch his fat belly if you need to. Or even better, kick his head," Cindy commands. Nicholas weakly lifts his head, and his fearful eyes drift towards the vile, green-skinned monster beside Cindy. He shows all his 55 crooked, revolting teeth. A bad banana. "Suspect has his hand on a weapon," the monster shouts. Nicholas furrows his bushy eyebrows in confusion. He thinks to himself, "I do not have my hand on a green Glock 17 appears between Nicholas's eyes, and it fierce with a deafening rumble. "Ho, ho, ho, Merry Christmas," the Grinch hollers. A rose-scented Santa Claus. Mrs. Claus doesn't bake cookies. She doesn't prepare any dessert at all, for that matter. Her husband eats enough cookies to last him 1 year on his journey around the globe. Instead, she cracks 5 eggs, 3 for him, 2 for her, spreads butter on toast, tosses a bowl of fruit for them to share, and prepares her husband's favorite, a mug of coffee with frothed reindeer milk and candy cane crumbles on top. It always gives him a nice boost before the annual Christmas soiree, which is hosted by the elves, forever adorers, kiss-asses, another might say, of the man in the red suit. This cup of joe will definitely give him a kick. The clock reads 5:35 a.m. He should be arriving soon, no later than 6, she hopes. If he's on time, their Christmas tradition can go on as usual. In the first 25 years of their marriage, she'd hear the reindeer and their jingling bells land on their cottage's immense sleighway at 6 on the dot. For the last 8 years, he was always 10, 20, even 30 minutes late. "Old age," explained the elder elf through the years. She scoffed openly at his comment. 65 was not that old. Last year, Mr. Claus arrived an hour late due to a highly rare reindeer injury. Plight, the Rudolph of the group. There were others with noses to guide the way, but Rudolph was the original, had broken a leg. Before he landed, Mrs. Claus was so distraught by her husband's recurring tardiness that she'd thrown the entire breakfast in the trash and dumped the coffee in the sink. 5:45 now. She should soon be hearing Santa's ho 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 as he slows his sleigh in the sky. She doesn't. But her anger is now water underneath a frozen layer of cool indifference. She grabs the coffee pot and pours 2 cups now, prepares his, then lays it on the pine tree-shaped coaster. 5:50. 6:00. 6:01. She waits at the table. At 6:25, Santa Claus lands. From inside, she hears the elves cheering, clapping, celebrating. No doubt they're all wearing their best elf suits, midnight black and made of pure wool, ready for the party that starts in 45 minutes. Mrs. Claus stopped going out to greet her husband 3 years ago. Old age and whatnot, she told the elder elf with a stiff, sweet smile, whose reply was merely an awkward smile and hesitant nod. Mrs. Claus waits at the circular wooden table on the chair that faces the door of their small cottage. Just a minute later, better to walk past those elves, lest they talk your ear off. The door opens, and in walks the man of the hour. Noel, known to her and some close friends, smiles. She knows what he's going to say next, because it's the same thing he says every year. Mrs. Claus deepens and roughens her voice to imitate her husband as he says, "I can't wait to shave this damn thing off." Noel laughs, and she does too. She still does love this man very much. Nothing, no one, could ever snatch that feeling away from her. Noel loves being Santa. She still remembers the pride on his face, mixed with shock and sudden nerves, when the elf jury chose him for the task. This was way back when he was Noel Fable, and she, Winterfrost, back when they'd only stolen a kiss or two and were too shy to hold hands in public. She'd never imagined she'd be Mrs. Claus, and certainly never thought about how their lives could look 28 years later. They selected him just 1 hour after Nick Claus had passed away at 75. It was, and had to be, a swift process. She'd wondered what it'd feel like if her husband died, and just 60 minutes later, people were lining up to replace him. She also thought about who it'd be. Perhaps Elliot Ryder, the young man who'd fixed up Plight's leg last year. She quite liked Elliot. He was the only one who was honest with her and told her that the only reason Plight would injure his leg, the others left unscathed, would be because he didn't want to land on a certain roof. Despite popular belief, reindeer are not loyal to the man with the bag himself, but rather the cause of Christmas itself. In fact, she too might say that she was dedicated to the cause, if need be. So why wouldn't he want to land? Elliot had asked her. She'd merely shrugged, because that was none of his business. She'd be replaced too, of course. If the new Santa had a honey, then it'd happen immediately. If he was single and ready to jingle, then later. But she'd be stripped of the name Claus and forced to move on. At least she'd get to keep their home and have a comfortable place to grieve. It was a quick and cruel but necessary procedure. Christmas didn't wait for anybody, and the North Pole was legally required to meet those children's demands. "Come sit, my love," Mrs. Claus says, patting the seat of the empty chair beside her. Noel obeys and moves closer to her. Before sitting, he leans in and gives her a sweet kiss on the cheek. The first time that Mrs. Claus smelled roses off his puffy white beard, she didn't question it. The third time, it had made her eyebrows furrow, but they'd had breakfast, and she'd moved on. The fourth time, suspicion came. Only confirmation followed in the next years. A perfume that didn't belong to her, that didn't actually exist on the North Pole at all, where there were only cinnamon, hot chocolate, pine, and other related scents. The tardiness and the incident last year only added to the pile of evidence. He threw in the logs and the kindling. Add a flame, and what else could you get but a fire? The scent now makes her knuckles turn white as snow against the mug's handle. "My favorite part of the day," Noel says as he finally sits. He reaches for the coffee cup, and Mrs. Claus only stares, with a smile that looks like a sticker someone threw on her face and stuck. It doesn't take one sip. He tells her about his night, skipping over certain details she imagines. Not that she wants to know. And together they eat. She finds that she has no trouble swallowing the eggs, chewing on the toast, even sipping her coffee. Not even when Noel starts slurring his words while talking about the best cookie of the night. She places the mug down with a soft thump as the slurs become choking sounds. She notices drops of milk on his mustache then. He looks at her with a confused expression, and those still gloved hands go to his neck. But Mrs. Claus doesn't move. Not even when he calls out for a name that is not her own. The smell of roses is still fresh under her nose when Mr. Claus starts turning purple. Santa falls off the chair, and Mrs. Claus, like any good wife, screams and calls for help. Toodle-oo. Mayor Ottentail, Arizona, 1875. Painter, the man known throughout town only by his profession, rolls onto his back, letting out a phlegmy cough, skin and bones, with one sad gray eye and the other covered by a patch and sporting a bushy brown beard and the remnants of a rumpled suit. Painter possesses immense talent. He's created numerous portraits and landscapes, as well as the risque painting of Painted Lady Queen Winona that hangs over the Wild Weed Saloon's bar. But he drinks away what money he makes. "I'm letting you out so you can enjoy Mayor Ottentail's 3-day birthday celebration," Marshall Cy Kincaid says, a towering, authoritative figure with a deep voice and rugged looks. 35-year-old New Hampshire native Cy is assisted in his duties by his 33-year-old Biloxi-born Deputy Van Sickle, whose droopy mustache, short, skinny frame, and lack of education belie his courage. "It's bad enough this rat trap town is named after him," Painter says. The only thing that blathering weasel deserves is a birthday cake with a stick of dynamite in it. You're off your mental reservation. For somebody who's only been here a year, you sure formulated a deep dislike for the mayor. Van notes. It ain't 'cause he's a southerner, is it? 'Cause if it is, you and me gonna have a tussle. Painter pulls his rumpled vest into place. No, it's who he is. He's been mayor here for 7 years, Cy says. 7 prosperous years. He helped start the bank and sank his own role into the general store and the livery stable. He hired us to protect the town. He's talked up your skills as an artist and sent you business. Just because he teases you once in a while about your liquor intake doesn't make him a bad man. You ought to kiss his feet. I've got something else he can kiss. Chad. Exiting the town hall, Mayor Druce Ottentail surveys the town's crowded streets. Banners are stretched between buildings, saying, "Happy birthday to our beloved mayor," and "Happy 40th, Mayor Ottentail." Salesmen hawking remedies, clowns handing out candy, peddlers selling silks, and stalls offering games of skill line the streets. Druce grumbles when he sees his wife posing for a portrait. Opal Ottentail is noted for her pale, delicate looks. She is also witty, erudite, knowledgeable, and caring. Qualities missing in Druce, who is viewed as all business, as suggested by his reedy build, stern features, beady eyes, tidy mustache, and refined southern accent. Really? In the street? You're treating the First Lady of Ottentail like a common harlot. Painter puts his brush down on the easel. I don't have a studio, Ottertail. Druce pulls his wife to his side. Well, you need to get one, you disgusting Yankee vagabond. Until you do, stay away from Opal. Who ever heard of a one-eyed painter? And in the future, the name's Ottentail, and you'll address me by my title. Yes, Mayor. Druce's pallid features burn crimson. He takes a threatening step toward Painter, but is pulled back by Cy. Van positions himself between them. I never seen 2 men who can get each other's goat more than you 2. Look around you, Mayor. Look at the banners, the balloons, and the stalls selling cards and buttons with your name and face on them, celebrating your birthday. You don't want to spoil all this by picking a fight with Painter. It's about time my husband was feted, don't you think? Opal beams as Druce pulls her away. Yes, ma'am. Van replies, giving Cy a queer side glance. She'd just say something about the mayor smelling bad? Van asks. 6 men on horseback trot past. The burly lead rider locks eyes with Cy. That's Jack Aker. I'd say our peaceful celebration just went to seed, Van comments. Cha. Aker and his gang tie their horses up at the Wildweed Saloon. Jack Aker takes a long, scornful look at Cy and Van before joining the rest of the gang inside. Born in Massachusetts, the Aker brothers served in the Union Army during the war. Afterward, they were guards for the Northeastern Railway. until they realized that robbing trains was easier and more profitable than guarding them. Wearing a perpetual frown across his sunburnt features, 44-year-old Jack Aker is crafty and murderous. Unlike his brothers, Jack is educated and prefers swindling to shooting. A ladies' man before the war, 37-year-old Lon Aker is sensitive about the angry red scar that runs from his forehead to his chin. 30-year-old Boston Belly Aker is an imposing 6'6" and unafraid to use his size to get what he wants. Riding with the Akers are their scruffy 17-year-old cousins, Les and Stanley Tremaine, who have fallen in love with the outlaw life. Them hard cases is here for one thing. Skullduggery, Van says. 6 again 2. The odds ain't stacked in our favor. Maybe we can reduce them and nip this situation in the bud. That tall dandy in the black duster and the stovepipe hat, that's Cack Bruder. He's wanted for killing a man in Stiffgate that he claimed dealt from the bottom. Let's send him back there. Drawing his gun, Cy confronts Bruder at the faro table. Party's over. You've got a hanging to attend. Yours. The Tremaine brothers brandish Bowie knives. Van swings the shotgun in their direction. Really, children? Behave, boys, Jack says. Belly. Aker slowly rises. You gotta go through me to get him. Van points the shotgun at Belly. This'll go through you faster'n spoiled milk. Jack pulls his brother back into his chair. Turn your steam down, Boston. You shouldn't treat visitors who've come here to spend their money and join your celebration like this, Marshall. Is that why you're here, Jack? Cy asks. It's not to rob the bank, steal some strumpet's pay, or gun somebody? No, and maybe. Jack replies, smirking. Well, there's going to be one less of you to do it, Cy replies. Come on, Cack. Bruder raises his hands. You gonna help me out, Jack? We know a Jim Dandy lawyer in Stiffgate, Jack replies. Don't worry, Cack, Lon adds. If we can't free you legally, we'll blast you out as soon as we're through here. But don't worry. Any witness to your shootin' who gets a good look at Belly's gonna forget what he saw. Cy motions Cack toward the door. You're starting out on the wrong foot, Marshall. I was about to say the same thing, Jack. Lon turns to Jack as Cack is led away. We just lost our best shooter. That doesn't change what we came here to do. Van picks at his teeth with a toothpick. That was what you call a gourmet lunch. We ought to do that more often. As often as my wallet can take, Deputy. Tilting his head, Van asks, what in tarnation is that noise? Sounds like a drum beat. But the parade's not till later, Cy answers. The pair follow the sound, which leads them to the town hall. Painter is marching back and forth in front of the building, banging on an old drum. Druce exits the building. Shaking his fist at Painter, he rushes to the lawman's side. Arrest him! Cy scratches his head. For what? Bad rhythm? Disturbing the peace. He's a menace. Since when did a drum become a dangerous weapon? Van questions. Just tell him to vamoose. I'm trying to close a deal to bring the railroad here. but he's ruining my chance." "You mean our chance, right, Mayor?" Cy asks. "Do your job, or you'll be looking for another one." Druce huffs, retreating inside. Van whistles. "Guess some folks is still fightin' the war." Later that afternoon, Painter is plying his craft outside the Wild Weed Saloon. "Try not to squirm, Pearl," Painter says to his subject. "Why? This ain't no photograph." Painter looks at Pearl, then back at his painting, hoping the tough cook will be happy to see herself without the pockmarks and missing teeth that mar her coarse appearance. Passing by, Druce glances at the portrait, muttering, "Ugly as a mud fence." "You say something, Your Majesty?" Pearl asks, making a fist. "Just how lovely you look. I can't believe they's holding a celebration for you, you four-flusher," Pearl says. "Sounds like she knows you well," Painter comments. Several townspeople gather around the portrait to gawk at it as Pearl raises her voice. "My husband, Maitland, rest his soul, fought off the Apaches to help bring this town into being. He don't get no parade, no fireworks, no banners. All you done, Druce, is claim his accomplishments for your own, while keeping your hand in the town's treasury till." The spectators glare at Druce, who smiles sheepishly. Jack and Lon join the crowd, throwing their arms around Druce. "Howdy, Mayor," Jack says, smirking. "Yeah, remember us?" Lon asks, running his finger down his scar. Druce breaks away from them, bumping into Cy. "These scallywags are causing trouble," he gasps. "We're just two slightly lubricated visitors, admiring the work of an artiste," Lon comments. Druce backs further away, his unblinking stare still riveted on the acres. "You know those two yahoos?" Cy asks. "Yes, they know me, and I know what they want to do to me. You have to get them out of town before they kill me." "He's been sampling the spiked punch," Lon says. "They haven't done anything," Cy notes. "Not yet. When they do, my death will be on you, Marshal," Druce shouts, hurrying off. "Dramatic, ain't he?" Lon comments. The following morning, Druce bursts through the jail's door, shoving a piece of paper in Cy's face. "What's the meaning of this?" Cy gives the page a cursory glance, passing it on to Van. "Looks like a wanted poster with your name on it." "Something you're not telling us, Mayor. Did you read it?" "Yep. It says you're a war criminal. The drawing is a nice likeness of you, too." "I'm not a war criminal." "Well, somebody thinks you are. There's a dozen of them posted up and down Main Street. My birthday celebration, my name, my reputation are in question." Cy narrows his gaze. "Just what did you do during the war, Mayor?" Druce clears his throat. I was behind the lines. He had it easy while Yoon and me was taking pot shots at each other." Van jokes. "It was never easy. The filth, the rats, the lack of supplies. Watching Natchez burn." "You was stationed in Natchez?" Van asks. "I ran the prisoner of war camp there." Van clenches his fists, his breath exiting in fitful bursts. "You sick son of a gun. You took pleasure out of starving and torturing soldiers. The Yankees took their anger out on us because of the way you mistreated their men. You're a disgrace to the uniform of the Confederate States Army. You murdering cur. Why don't you go take down the fake wanted posters, Van? Cy suggests. Why? They're true. Git. Van spits at Druce's feet, storming out. He fought on your side, Druce. I can't imagine how the Union prisoners feel about you. What went on in that camp? We had no water supply, no food, unsanitary conditions, and 20,000 prisoners. Most of them died from scurvy and dysentery. In the summer, we lost 100 a day to the heat. When one man died, another took his rotting rags. The prisoners were always trying to escape, so we had to resort to extreme methods. Anyone who got too close to the fence was shot. The boys, the drummer boys, they weren't going to survive anyway. So, you murdered them? I don't expect you to understand, Cy. It was war. When the armistice was signed, I was tried for war crimes and acquitted. Jack and Lon Aker were two of the prisoners who attended the trial. They swore vengeance, that I'd pay someday, and they are here to collect. Standing at the side of the podium, Cy elbows Van, pointing at the Aker gang. The gang has gathered near the front of the podium, so Druce can see their taunting smiles. Druce pecks Opal on the cheek. Shuffling papers, he begins his speech. The war against the states was hell, he says, looking at Jack and Lon Aker. Each of us lucky to survive left a piece of us behind on some battlefield, some hospital, or some prison, Jack shouts. I still wake up in a cold sweat at nights, yelling the names of the Union soldiers I had to kill. You mean murder? Jack grumbles. He doesn't have nightmares. He gave them to us, Lon adds. An eerie silence permeates as the crowd waits for a stunned Druce to respond. The crowd jumps, then laughs as a succession of firecrackers explode near the stand. Druce cringes behind the podium. Realizing he's unharmed, he slowly rises, grinning nervously. Opal lies on the floor next to him, writhing in pain. Who would want to hurt my wife? Druce asks. Not Opal. You? Cy grimly declares. She was lucky, though. The bullet passed right through her arm. You think they were aiming for me, after what you told me? Yep. We found a rifle across the street in a second-floor room of the hotel. It's a standard Henry rifle used by soldiers. It could be owned by any one of us, including the Akers. I remember seeing Aker and his boys. They were standing in front of us, Druce says. Looks like you got more enemies than we thought, Mayor. That evening, Druce sways as he sits atop the bar, his storytelling embellished by the strength of the liquor he's been drinking for the past several hours. It's about time the mayor ran out of yarns and out of steam, Van says. I'm tired of babysitting this blatherskite and having to stick him like a leech. Cy scans the room. It's the last night of his celebration. He's going to suck as much flavor out of the moment as he can. I just wish he'd picked a less public place to do it in. And we had those bluebellies trapped in the valley. It was a turkey shoot. The doors swing open. Jack Aker and his gang saunter in. Jack acknowledges Painter with a nod, quickly moving on. The Tremaine brothers thread through the crowd, moving to Druce's right side, while the Eicher brothers gather left of the Mayor. I could hear Dixie coming from the band. How could you hear it above the screams of the prisoners you tortured? Lon asks. Oh, he could, brother, Jack says. Because they don't write songs about cowards. Toodle-oo, Mayor, a gunshot echoes throughout the barroom. A bullet buries itself in the pillar next to Druce's head. Cy pushes Druce off the bar. Druce falls behind it, curling up underneath it, out of everyone's sight. Cy notices that none of the Eichers have drawn their weapons. Growling like a mad beast, Belly swats everyone in his path aside. Grabbing Cy, he puts him in a bear hug, crushing him. Let me go, Belly. Sure, when you're dead. Reaching for his gun, Cy jams it between them, firing 3 shots. Belly releases him. Backing away, he laughs at the blood spurting from his chest as he falls face first. Jack and Lon reach for their guns. Lon fires at Cy. His 2 bullets strike Le Tremaine, killing him as he runs in front of Cy in an attempt to escape. Stanley Tremaine reaches for his Bowie knife, intent on throwing it at Cy, but a sea of panicking customers knocks the blade from his hand, and he's pushed out the back door. He doesn't return. Cy fires 2 shots at Lon, who drops his gun, falling backward. Hiding behind a pillar, Jack hits Van on the forearm with a slug from his Colt. Cradling his shotgun, Van returns fire, splintering the pillar. A second blast blows a now exposed Jack off his feet. Druce greets Cy on the street the next morning. They watch a crew of men pulling down banners and sweeping up the celebration's confetti. How's Eicher? Gut shot, and about ready to join his brothers in the mortuary. I'm going to Doc's office to see him now. I hate to owe a Yankee, but thank you, Marshal. It's nice not to have to look over my shoulder anymore. I'm so happy. I think I'll have that reprobate painter paint my portrait. Toodle-oo. Jack grabs Cy's hand as the pain sears through his body. You know what I regret most? That a Reb finished me. You carried the pain of being in Ottentail's prison for 10 years. Why try to kill Druce now, Jack? We were paid to create a ruckus during the mayor's speech. The man who hired us decided he was going to kill Ottentail. He shot Ottentail's wife by mistake. Then he wanted to kill Ottentail while he was drunk in the saloon. He missed again. Everybody, including you, thought me or one of my brothers had pulled the trigger, so Belly decided to act first. He should have left the killing to us. Who hired you? Jack wheezes heavily. A broken man. He was a prisoner with Lon and me in Natchez. He was a clean-cut, handsome kid, a drummer boy during the war, never even shot a gun. I almost didn't recognize him when he rode into our camp last year, all thin and grizzled. Ottentail had made an example of him, whipped him, stuck a hot poker in his eye, and left him for dead. The Rebs buried him alive outside of the camp. He dug his way out and crawled back to the Union line. The loud report of a shotgun blast sounds in the street. Opal's scream sends Cy scrambling to the window. "Help! Painter just shot my husband." A day to remember. Francina Tutiliogi sat up in bed, holding on to dear life the photo of the man who melted her heart, Troy Edwards. It was the night before the big day, the biggest day in her life, where she was going to walk down that aisle and say, "I do," officially becoming Mrs. Troy Edwards. It was the moment her family had been awaiting, including all her cousins, distant and close, from all over the town. As she glanced at the photo of the striking young man, his golden hair that was slicked back, and ocean blue eyes that possessed serenity in them, with whom she'd spend the rest of her life, she sighed dreamily as she began to reminisce about the first time they laid eyes on each other. 1 year ago, during the summer, Troy was a student at the University of Cambridge studying English when he was offered a study abroad program that gave him the opportunity to travel to Italy. The summer program lasted for 7 weeks, and it was during one of those 7 weeks when he made a chance encounter with Francina. She was making her way back home from grocery shopping, and he was trying to find the best restaurant in town. She bumped into him, both hands carrying bags filled with vegetables and other ingredients for dinner, with a carrot falling to the ground. He picked it up for her, and when she looked up, she was enthralled by what she saw. With a sheepish grin, he spoke to her in flawless Italian, asking her for directions to the nearest restaurant for dinner. She laughed, replying to him in Italian that she could speak English as well, and she invited him to dine with her and her family so that he was not alone. Leave it to Francina to show generosity to a complete stranger, especially to an Englishman as good-looking as Troy was, with his sexy accent. She liked that he made an effort to communicate with her in Italian. Not many foreigners, yet alone Americans, would have gone out of their way to do that. Troy followed Francina to her home, where she introduced him to her family. He shook hands with Francina's father, Marco, and her mother, Martina. He also got to know her cousins, Elisa, Paolo, and Natalia, as well as her maternal grandparents, Rosa Maria and Giuseppe. Francina did not have any siblings, so her cousins were like the siblings she'd never had. Troy was an only child as well, so this was the first thing that bonded them as something they had in common. Despite Marco's protectiveness of his only daughter interacting with a man who was not Italian, he still got along with Troy, as did the rest of the family. Troy was a pleasant guest, and he was able to tell the family about who he was. They were impressed by his academic background and his flawless Italian, which eased the initial tensions between them. when they encouraged him to speak English to them. Francina was impressed by Troy's ability to charm her family, and for the first time in her life, she fell in love without even realizing it. He charmed his way into her heart, and she wanted to make sure he never forgot. So, when dinner was over and he was getting ready to leave, Francina walked Troy out and thanked him for his company. "I hope to see you again sometime soon," she said. "I'll see what I can do." He gave her that unforgettable smile before he left, and Francina sighed as she thought about the handsome man who came into her home that night and stole her heart away. As a 17-year-old girl, she'd never felt this way about anyone until she laid eyes on Troy. Now, it's been a whole year since that memorable night when she met him, and Francina was eager to marry Troy. She was 18, and he was 23, so she was not too young to get married. This was a time when it was the norm for women to wed at a young age, and Francina's family strongly believed that she was old enough to fall in love and marry. In their eyes, she was no longer a little girl. Marco realized this when Troy came over last week and asked for his permission to marry his beautiful, precious daughter. He trusted and loved Troy enough to consider him to be the son that he'd never had, and he eventually offered the young man his blessing to wed Francina. The next day, Martina and Rosa Maria accompanied Troy to the jewelry store to find the most beautiful ring for Francina, which took them an hour until he found the perfect one. When Troy realized how expensive it cost, he was unsure if it was worth it to spend abundant pocket money on a ring that Francina might not appreciate later in life. He was not employed at the moment, so this would pose a potential financial threat. Rosa Maria, giving him a sympathetic smile, suggested, "I suppose it would be better if you could just give her mine instead." She took off her ring and gave it to him. "Her grandfather gave this to me, which I also gave to her mother here. And now I'm giving it to you to give to her. This ring is a symbol of love in our family, and I have no doubt that you'll make her happy." Troy examined the ring before he could accept it. "Are you sure, Signora?" he asked. Rosa Maria nodded in response as a tear fell down her eye. Martina held her mother's hand. She could tell this was an emotional decision for her mother to make, for the sake of her lovely daughter. Martina said, "Real love does not cost anything. The gift you give must come straight from the heart. Francina shall treasure this all the days of her life. This we are certain of." Rosa Maria had brought her ring's jewelry box with her to secure the ring for the time being. The three of them thanked the store owner for her time before they departed, and Troy's decision was set. He was going to propose to Francina that evening during dinner. That evening, Francina was wearing a lovely aqua blue dress, looking as stunning as ever. She was elated to see Troy join her for dinner, for two at her house. And here he was, dressed in a suit and tie. She didn't know it, but he had the ring in his pocket for safekeeping. He would take it out during dessert time, but for now, it was time to enjoy the main course, while a musician that her mother hired played gentle, romantic music on the piano. When it was time for dessert, the maid came to collect their dinner plates so that the cook could serve the tiramisu and panna cotta. Francina's favorite dessert since childhood was panna cotta, so it was a miracle that the cook could read her mind by providing her favorite dessert. The main course wasn't all that bad either, but the dessert was the best part. Troy held Francina's hand and gazed lovingly into her chocolate-brown eyes. "Have I ever told you how beautiful you looked tonight?" he asked in a smooth voice that caused her heart to beat. "You tell me that all the time," she replied with a giggle. "Well, that is the truth, and I'll never let you forget it. I love you, Francina. I can't explain it, but you mean the world to me. I've never met a woman as beautiful as you. I never felt this way about anyone else before, if you can believe it." Francina smiled. She believed it. He was her first and only. "I love you too, Troy. I love to spend time with you. And I love how happy you make my family. Their happiness is important to me, too. Thank you for opening my eyes and my heart to see what true love is. I do what I do best." He grinned as he made his bold move by getting down on one knee and taking out the ring. "And this is the best thing I'll ever do. I want to spend the rest of my life with you, Francina. I know your family must think that you're much too young, but for me this feels right. I don't wish to wait a minute longer. Life is short and precious. Precious, just like you." A tear of joy ran down Francina's face. For a second, she thought she was dreaming, but she was not. This was reality. Troy Edwards was really proposing to her. "Troy," she began. "Shh, don't say anything yet. I love you with all my heart, Francina. Your family has been generous and kind to me, especially your father. He gave me his blessing to ask for your hand in marriage. He loves you and is rather protective of you, which is a great thing, because it means that you come from a loving family who want nothing but the best for you. They can agree that I'm the best for you, right? So, what do you say, Francina Toodle-oo? Will you make me the happiest man in the world and be my wife?" Another tear ran down Francina's face as she glanced down at the ring. She recognized it as her grandmother's ring, and it was a family treasure. Rosa Maria had handed it down to Martina, and Martina decided to give it to Troy, to give to Francina. Touched by the beauty of the ring, Francina had no choice but to say yes to forever. "Yes, Yes, 1,000,000 times yes. She squealed with joy as he put the ring on her finger. Troy announced. She said yes, everybody. Her family arrived in the kitchen to congratulate the young couple. They had organized this dinner so that Francina and Troy could share a private moment with each other as he proposed to her. She just made him the happiest man alive by saying yes. For the rest of the week, after that memorable evening, Francina and her family began preparing for the wedding. Troy's family and friends flew in from England so that they could be there for him. Now, the two families were eager to celebrate their children's eternal bliss. The night before the big day, Francina sat up in bed as she glanced at Troy's photo on her nightstand, reminiscing about the first time she met him, and her fears were eased. Everything was going to be perfect. She woke up in a blissful mood the next morning. A bright and beautiful Saturday. That morning, her family was cheerful as they worked with the photographers and makeup artists to capture as many photos of the bride-to-be as possible. Marco and Giuseppe decided to head to the church to inform the priest that they were getting Francina ready for the occasion. And they stayed in the church with the priest and incoming guests for the ceremony. The women remained in the house with Francina, along with her cousins, for moral support as she wore her elegant, long-sleeved, V-neck lace gown. It was an original, nothing like what her mother, grandmother, or aunts had worn before. Rosa Maria couldn't contain her emotions as she wept at the sight of her stunning granddaughter. She told Francina, "Sei una sposa bellissima." You make a beautiful bride. Francina, flattered by the compliment, gave her grandmother a hug. "Nonna, non piangere. Se piangi, mi farai piangere anche tu." Grandma, don't cry. If you cry, you'll make me cry too. Rosa Maria told Francina that she'd see her downstairs after her cousin, Elisa, helped her with her necklace. After Rosa Maria left, Elisa went to her room to find a more stylish necklace for Francina. In the moment that her cousin and grandmother left, and Francina was alone in her room, Francina went up to the window to open it so that she could get some fresh air in her room. It was supposed to be a very warm afternoon, but then she felt someone shove her in the back, causing her to stumble backward onto the window, shattering it. And she screamed as she fell many feet from the window to the ground. Elisa returned to her room, dumbstruck when she saw the shattered glass, and peered out at her injured cousin on the ground and cried out in terror. Francina, Rosa Maria, and the others came running to the room. "Cosa è successo?" Rosa Maria asked Elisa, seeking to know what happened. Elisa replied, sobbing, "È Francina. È caduta dalla finestra." It's Francina. She fell out the window. Everyone gasped in shock and horror as they came up to the room. glanced at the remains of the broken glass window on the floor. Martina called 911 to report that her daughter had fallen out of the window. She offered to stay behind with Francina until help arrived, while Rosa Maria and the other women volunteered to go to the church to break the shocking news to Marco, Giuseppe, and even Troy. The wedding would have to be postponed for now. Everything happened within minutes. Paramedics came to transport Francina to the hospital, and the family was left reeling from the shocking news. Even Troy was devastated that such an unfortunate thing could happen to the woman that he loved, who he was supposed to share the rest of his life with. Now it wasn't to be. Instead, she was fighting for her life, not knowing whether she would make it or not. The doctors told the family that Francina had suffered significant head injuries and broken bones, so they were going to perform emergency surgery on her to save her life. In the meantime, investigators were around to examine the fall to determine how she could have fallen out the window. A week later, Francina was in the process of recovering from the surgery, and her family became devoted to caring for her, including Troy. Although they did not get married as planned, he was still determined to take care of her, as if she was his wife. That's how much he loved her, and how much he was willing to stick by her through the thick and thin, in sickness and in health, for better or worse. The vows he was following before he actually had a chance to say, "I do," to her. A week later, Francina was still in the process of recovery. That night, as she was about to wash her face in the bathroom before heading to bed, she couldn't help but overhear the conversation taking place downstairs in the living room. She heard Elisa sobbing uncontrollably, and the others comforting her. "Va bene, Elisa," Martina reassured her, telling her that everything was going to be okay. "No, non lo è," Elisa replied in between her sobs. "È tutta colpa mia. Ho spinto Francina apposta. Vedi, volevo ferirla, perché sono così gelosa di lei. Ottiene sempre tutto ciò che vuole. E ora sta per sposarsi con un uomo che ama. Non è giusto, perché che mi dici di me? Non posso farci niente se provo così tanto risentimento nei suoi confronti. Per l'amor del cielo, ha solo 18 anni. Elisa had just practically confessed to having pushed Francina out of the window deliberately while her cousin was alone in the room. She was supposed to help Francina put on her necklace, but instead, she ended up pushing her out the window instead. She wanted to hurt Francina, having always been jealous of her for whatever reason, believing that Francina always got everything she wanted, especially now that she was bound to marry the man that she loved, Troy Edwards. Elisa said she couldn't help the resentment that she'd apparently always felt toward Francina, and now she's trying to justify it by saying that Francina's the one getting married at only 18. Elisa was 23, the same age as Troy, and she herself was single and unattached. Men tended to gravitate more toward Francina than to her, or at least that's how she felt. That was a criminal confession in a nutshell. Francina wanted to go down and confront Elisa, but her weakened condition made her too tired to engage in any yelling. She'd yell at her tomorrow. Instead, she gave Troy a phone call to explain everything to him, and she asked him to report this to the authorities the next morning, which he agreed to do. This was her plan of revenge against Elisa, turning her in. When Francina woke up the next morning, Martina offered to help her downstairs to the kitchen for a nice breakfast. She asked her daughter, "Come ti senti stamattina?" wanting to know how Francina was feeling. "Sto bene, grazie, mamma," Francina replied, saying that she was feeling fine. Rosa Maria gave Francina her dish of eggs and toast, as well as a cup of orange juice, smiling adoringly at her brave granddaughter, who was handling all this with grace. "Grazie mille, nonna. Di niente, amor mio." Rosa Maria gave her a kiss on the forehead to say, "You're welcome, my love." At that moment, there was a knock on the door, and the officers called out for Elisa. Elisa introduced herself to them as they informed her that she was officially charged with assault toward Francina by shoving her out the window. Elisa sobbed, apologizing profusely to Francina and the others, although there was very little her apologies could do now. With delightful smiles, the whole family watched her being escorted by law enforcement. And for the first time in her life, Francina felt victorious toward her bitter, vengeful cousin, who was now going to face the consequences of her terrible actions. Like a breath of cold air, by December, Montreal was buried under a heavy coat of snow that had been piling up since late October. Gray slush lined the streets, the result of salt and traffic grinding the once pristine snow into a dirty, icy mess. The biting cold cut through even the thickest coats, and the endless scraping of shovels and snowplows provided a constant backdrop to city life. Holiday decorations were everywhere, but their cheer felt commercial, more of a reminder to spend money than a celebration. The air smelled faintly of exhaust and wet wool, the kind of scent that lingered in crowded metro stations and poorly insulated homes. Yet, as Veronique walked through the city streets, her boots crunching against the fresh snow, she couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. She'd always loved the holidays. As a child, she'd marveled at the shimmering decorations, the sound of boots crunching against ice, and the occasional scent of poutine wafting from nearby diners. But this year, the joy seemed oddly hollow, as if it were a beautiful facade masking something dark and unspoken. She paused at the corner by Sherbrooke, her breath curling in front of her in frosty puffs. It wasn't just the odd unease she'd felt all week. There were other signs, too. Small things that would have gone unnoticed if she weren't already on edge. Like the fact that the street lights on Peel Street flickered every time she passed, even though they stayed steady for everyone else. Or the elderly woman at the grocery store who stared at her just a little too long, her milky eyes narrowing in suspicion before she hurried away. Then there was the panhandler. Brian had been a fixture outside McGill University's McLennan Library for as long as Veronique could remember. Now in her 3rd year, she'd often passed him on her way to classes. Wrapped in layers of tattered coats and scarves, he was well known among the students, who occasionally dropped coins into his cup. Brian had a reputation for getting himself thrown in jail during the harshest nights of winter. A desperate but effective way to stay warm. Last year, however, everything had changed. Brian had started muttering about the Winter Watcher, claiming to have seen him lurking in the city. His stories grew more frantic, and the locals dismissed him as crazy. Then, one night, Brian's body had been found in an alley, his lifeless form curled against the icy ground. Officially, it was chalked up to exposure, but his wild claims lingered in Veronique's mind. Lately, she'd been seeing Brian again, or at least she thought she had. Every time Veronique walked by the library, he'd be sitting there, looking directly at her, his eyes impossibly sharp and knowing. But no one else seemed to notice him. When she asked Tara, her friend had just laughed nervously. "Brian's been gone for a year, Veronique. Maybe you're just remembering him." And when she glanced back, it was as if he'd vanished into thin air. "Get a grip," Veronique muttered to herself, pulling her scarf tighter around her neck. She glanced around the bustling street. Everything looked perfectly ordinary. People bustled into malls or hurried underground into the metro system to escape the biting wind. And yet, she still felt the weight of something looming just beyond reach. She turned toward Upstairs Jazz Bar and Grill on Bishop Street, a cozy spot where she could grab a reasonably priced lunch and momentarily escape the cold. As she walked, she couldn't shake the nagging sensation that Brian's ghostly presence had followed her. Even now, she felt as if a pair of eyes were drilling into her back, though every glance over her shoulder revealed nothing but bustling pedestrians. The regular waiter, Roman, who hailed from Poland, greeted her with a familiar nod. People like Roman weren't called baristas in the 1990s, but he knew her usual order by heart. "The usual, Veronique?" Roman asked, already reaching for a menu, but knowing she probably wouldn't need it. Veronique nodded, offering a half smile. She found a seat near the small stage, cradling her coffee as jazz music played softly in the background, its warmth seeping into her hands. She stared out at the bustling street, searching for what? She didn't know, but the feeling of being watched pressed against her back, making her fidget in her chair. "You okay?" Roman's voice startled her. He had appeared beside her, his concern etched across his features. "Yeah, I'm fine," Veronique said quickly. "Just tired, I guess." Roman hesitated, then nodded. "Well, let me know if you need anything." When he walked away, Veronique caught sight of something in the reflection of the window. The panhandler from outside the library, standing still as stone on the opposite side of the street. She whipped her head around, but the spot was empty. The crowd moved on, oblivious. Veronique's pulse quickened. She could have sworn she'd seen him. Not just anyone, either. It was unmistakably the same man. His ragged layers and piercing gaze haunted her thoughts. She shook her head, taking a long sip of her mocha. Maybe she was imagining things. That night, the whispers returned. Veronique lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, her heart pounding in the dark. The murmurs were faint, but unmistakable, as if coming from the walls themselves. "Who's there?" she called out, her voice trembling. The whispers stopped abruptly, leaving the room in suffocating silence. Veronique reached for her phone, its glow a small comfort in the oppressive dark. She typed a quick text to her best friend, Tara. "I think I'm losing it." Weird noises in the house again. A reply came almost instantly. "Want me to come over?" Veronique hesitated. She didn't want to drag Tara into this. Whatever this was. "No, I'll be fine. Just needed to tell someone." She set the phone down and closed her eyes, willing sleep to come. When it finally did, her dreams were restless. A blur of faceless figures, snow turning crimson, and the sound of bells tolling deep and low. The next morning, Veronique decided she needed answers. If she didn't do something, the unease would consume her. She started with the McGill Library, its towering stone facade dusted with fresh snow. The interior smelled of aged paper and varnished wood. The librarian, Mrs. Haversham, greeted her with a kind smile. "Researching something special?" Veronique hesitated, unsure how to phrase her question without sounding unhinged. "Actually, have you ever heard of anything strange happening around here? Like weird stories or legends?" Mrs. Haversham's smile faltered. "Strange how? I don't know. Just things that don't feel right. Or people seeing things that aren't there." The librarian's gaze sharpened. She glanced around to make sure they were alone before leaning in. "You're not the first to ask questions like that. This city has its quirks, let's say, especially around this time of year." "What do you mean?" Veronique pressed, her pulse quickening. Mrs. Haversham hesitated. "There's an old story about someone called the Watcher. It's just a folk tale, of course, but some say he appears in times of great personal unrest. They say he watches, waiting for something. But here's the strange part. Only the one he's watching can see him. Veronique swallowed hard. Have you seen him? The librarian's face darkened. No, and I hope I never do. That evening, Veronique found herself standing in her living room, staring at the Christmas tree she'd painstakingly decorated the week before. The ornaments gleamed under the soft glow of the fairy lights, but the sight brought her no comfort. Mrs. Haversham's words echoed in her mind. The Watcher. She'd looked up the story online when she got home. Most of the information was vague, but the consistent thread was that he appeared during moments of deep vulnerability, as if drawn to people who felt unseen themselves. The knock at the door made her jump. She turned, her heart racing. It was probably Tara, she told herself, though a chill crept over her as she remembered the last time she'd seen Brian. Was he outside again? Could ghosts knock? But when she opened the door, no one was there. Just the cold wind and the faint sound of carolers in the distance. She stepped outside, peering into the night. Snow fell softly, blanketing the world in an eerie stillness. Then she saw him, Brian, standing at the end of her driveway. There was no mistaking it. His tattered layers and unblinking stare were as vivid as they had been when he was alive. She wanted to call out, to demand answers, but her voice caught in her throat. The figure didn't move, only watching her with an intensity that froze her in place. Veronique's breath caught in her throat. She stumbled back inside, slamming the door and locking it. Her hands shook as she grabbed her phone to call Tara. But before she could dial, the whispers started again, louder this time, surrounding her. She clamped her hands over her ears, but it was no use. The lights flickered. Then, with a final, shuddering gasp, they went out. In the darkness, Veronique felt the weight of his presence. She didn't need to see him to know he was there, just beyond the door, watching, waiting, and for the first time, she understood what he wanted. Her. The next morning, Veronique's house stood as it always had, its cheerful decorations a stark contrast to the unease that lingered in the air. Neighbors passed by, unaware of what had transpired within those walls. But Veronique was gone, leaving behind only faint footprints in the snow leading toward the city streets. And in Montreal's busy streets, the holiday festivities carried on. But every so often, someone would pause, glancing over their shoulder, a fleeting sense of being watched brushing against their mind before disappearing like a breath of cold air. The cemeteries keeper. There once was a man, and he used to be known as the cemeteries keeper. He would wash the stones and make the graves intact with new paint jobs and flowers. He would be seen sitting down talking to the stones. While he ate his lunch, it was a different stone each day. Everybody thought he was creepy. He wore black every day, like he was about to attend a funeral. A full suit and tie. Even in the summer, he would watch everyone from afar that went past, especially those who came in. He would hide near the trees and light up a cigarette. You could hear him choke from a mile away. That's how everyone knew he was there. The coughing. He helped the community by doing his job and keeping it clean, but he would never get recognized for it. It was a hard job. Nobody knew his family. They knew he was watching them. He hung around the graveyard at night to stop the youngsters from vandalizing the stones. But he had to be careful, as they were loud and in groups, and could possibly be holding a weapon. He would just scrub it off when they left. Until one day, some youngish kids came by and smashed up all the gravestones and tried to dig to find the coffins and the bodies inside. The next day, he was found dead, lying among the gravestones, with his head in a bucket of water, what he was cleaning with. Whoever it was drowned him, and they had a purpose. There was a rumor going around saying that he hurt some children, but that was a lie. I'm Detective Susan Baker, and I took over this case. Two things were obvious, one being the fact that this was foul play. The other, I think I know who did it, and I needed him to confess. This fella I speak of has just gotten out of prison for murdering someone 5 years ago. He only got 5 bloody years. Pathetic from the justice system's side. But nobody showed up at court for him. His record was clean. He had never done a bad thing in his entire life. He had strangle marks around his neck. When I found him, he was cold. He had been beaten before he drowned. The coroner said he was definitely strangled to death. He had knife marks on his rib cages and a big one marked on his throat. Whoever killed him really wanted him to die. They collected the DNA and matched it with the strangle marks. Whoever it may have been left dirty scratch marks. With the gunk left under their nails, we found a match, just who I thought it was. The man has just gotten out of jail, and he got bail to his mother's house. He had nowhere else to go. He had a big group of friends that committed crime all over the area. The crime rate was bad without them. Hopefully, my partner, Sir John, and I could take down who did it today. It was going to be a long one, which meant that we wouldn't be with our families today, which was Christmas Eve. I wasn't expecting that. The boss said we could go, but once again, we had to protect the city. I put up so many Christians' lights this year, hoping to not have them vandalized too. During the festive holidays, the people in my area too would go absolutely nuts, screaming, fighting, punching on doing drugs, hard drugs, might I add. drug dealers on each corner. The lowest act was burning someone's house down on Christmas Eve, leaving them with nothing. In this area, this has unfortunately happened on a regular basis, due to mainly domestic violence or vandalism, the occasional break-in. I've gotten a few bravery awards due to taking down a man with a gun and saving someone from committing suicide. My partner is my mentor. He is a good bloke, tough, well-built. It was time to search for more clues. Maybe we will find footprints or something leading to the murder area. As we arrived in the darkness, we heard more youngsters roaming about and obviously destroying the headstones. We turned our flashlights on and pulled out our badges. They were horrified, stopped in their tracks. "We need the names of all of you. Now," my partner said with a scary tone. About an hour later, we had all their names. They were finally going to be charged with vandalism. Each kid had to pay for the damage that they did, with their protective parents. Each of them got a fine of $1,000. Each made payment plans. I wondered who would take over the graveyard now, or would they just let it overgrow? The graveyard overgrown. It had been about a month since he passed away. The stones were dirty, vines growing in every direction. We interrogated the fella that I thought it was, but he would not confess, even though we found his DNA on the man's neck. He said the old man kissed me, and I put my hands on his throat, but he didn't die. Last time I saw him, he was alive. I didn't kill him. I knew that was a lie, because the old man didn't go near anybody because they could be armed with a weapon. We found a couple of footprints. We matched it with the same shoes, but he still would not confess, even after a violent interrogation. We showed him pictures of the old man's crime scene. He looked away. We made sure that we got a warrant out for his arrest. We found the murder weapon after a big search in the creek. He had dumped it in there. He had no remorse. He had his poker face on. He was put in a cell for attempted murder up until his court hearing on loop. Maverick Kotzen, 12/27/24, on loop. It was less than an hour after my surgery that I realized I would never be able to forgive my surgeon. Merely a week prior, I had walked into my surgeon's office to go over the final details leading up to the procedure. What to eat and drink beforehand. What to not do. And a reiteration of the risks in order to confirm that I really wanted the procedure. Ever since I had fallen off a rock swing and slammed my elbow into a rock, my right arm hadn't been able to move or even bend, leading me to be effectively half as useful as I used to be. The choice to get a full reconstruction of my elbow was not an easy one. The way it had broken, there were far less invasive and safer procedures that were available to me. I was hesitant, but my surgeon took my hand, assured me that it was the best course of action, and said, "It's going to be okay." 3 days before the procedure, my anxiety had only worsened, and my partner had done the best they could to comfort me. They told me that the risks were still low, and that this procedure would return to me the full mobility I had before my life was turned upside down. Friends had reached out, comforting me and wishing me a speedy recovery, as if I had already gone through with the operation. It felt as if I had already been altered, physically and personally, by the procedure, despite not even having the surgery yet. Even my dog knew something was off, as he wagged his tail and snuggled up next to me every night in my bed, instead of sleeping in his dog bed like he always does. It felt like the natural rhythm of my life had been disrupted, and that nothing would ever feel the same way it did. I began to fantasize and romanticize my life before the accident, as if it had been the peak of existence. This, of course, glosses over the struggles I was having earlier that year to pay rent, repair my relationship with my parents, and help a friend through an accidental pregnancy. Through the storm of thoughts, I clutched desperately to the mast of the boat, repeating as the next big wave came to hit me, "It's going to be okay." 2 days before the procedure, the anxiety had not improved, and it was visible on my partner's face that they were clearly worried about me. My despondency when I was asked questions, my inattentiveness when attempting tasks with one arm, and even my lack of appetite were just a few of the worrying symptoms that were beginning to present themselves en masse. Behind my back, my partner was contacting my friends, trying to coordinate some kind of effort to boost my mood, all while I more or less lay in my bed all day, watching daytime television and periodically getting up to use the restroom. In between naps and TV fever dreams, I had flashbacks to all of the warnings from friends and family about the procedure. "Are you sure you want to do this? What if you never fully recover? I don't know about this operation. Isn't there a considerable chance they screw up and just have to amputate your arm? I fully support you and your decision, but I want to make sure you've thought it through." These criticisms, at the time, seriously made me reconsider my decision. Ultimately, I decided to stay the course, but the decision to go against the better advice of my friends felt wrong even at the time. The weird and odd feeling of regret that washed over me every time I reassured them and told them I was going through with it only amplified the more people I talked to. Whenever I talked to anyone who knew me, the surgery would sooner or later come up, and I would have to wait during conversation until that dreaded moment came. My friends were with me, surgery or no, but the storm upon which my boat had been sailing only seemed to intensify as big wave after big wave nearly broke my ship in two. Still clutching onto that mast of hope as thoughts flowed freely in and out of my mind as I lay awake at midnight. It's going to be okay. 24 hours out from the procedure, my anxiety had completely paralyzed me. Even the most basic tasks, like brushing my teeth or going to the bathroom, felt like Herculean tasks that required tremendous effort. I turned off my phone at that point in order to calm my nerves, and had even sworn off television for the day. I just sat in my bed and read some of my favorite books, periodically taking breaks to stare out of the window. The surgery loomed like a dark cloud above my head, ready to rain over my head at any given moment and take full control of my consciousness. It dawned on me at that moment that this procedure, the one I had defended from friends and fought so hard to have, had largely come to define me as a person. At the very least, I had let it define me in many ways. Reflecting on my thoughts at the time, I am now able to see how completely enveloped I had been. Irony, though cruel. For it seemed that despite the fact that my elbow was about to be repaired, a part of me had been damaged in the process. Sure, I was to be fixed physically, but mentally, my anxiety and nervousness had never been higher. As I went to bed that night, the last thought I can remember is a gentle acceptance as the day of the surgery fast approached, and a comforting line, "It's going to be okay." On the morning of the surgery, my surgery, I was woken by my partner early in the morning. They gave me my water bottle, my clothes, and opened the door for me to get into the passenger seat of our car at a bright and sunny 4 a.m. By the time I got to the hospital, all events began to blend together. The reception, the being shown to the bed, and the surgeon's explanation of the preoperative all seemed like a free-flowing dream. The last memory I have right before going under anesthesia is of my partner holding my hand, whispering in a soft, reassuring tone, "It's going to be okay." As I would soon find out, it was not going to be okay. Based on the beginning of my story, you can guess how well my procedure went. 3 hours into the reconstruction of my elbow, a complication caused internal bleeding all throughout my arm. With no ability to stop it, they ended up having to amputate my arm from the elbow down. Upon waking, I felt phantom pain almost immediately, and would continue to feel that way for days after. My surgeon came into the room shortly after I awoke and tried consoling me. There was nothing I could have done. These things just happen sometimes. I'm sorry. Did any of his words even matter? I had held his words dear for so long, and for them to ring hollow in my moment of utmost need was one of the most depressing situations I have ever been in. My partner, in between crying sessions, attempted to reassure me, I heard him begin to say. "Don't worry. No matter what, it's going to be..." Whispers in the Snow. Title: Whispers in the Snow. Emily pressed her forehead against the cold glass of the window, her breath leaving no trace on the surface. Outside, the village lay blanketed in snow, every rooftop twinkling with warm lights. Christmas Eve had always felt quieter since Daniel's death, but this year, the silence pressed harder against her ribs. She ran her fingers along the edges of a faded photograph. Daniel's grin, all teeth and mischief, stared back at her. He was only 17. A car accident on the icy roads. At least, that's what everyone had told her. But no matter how many years passed, Emily could never quite remember the details. Or her mind was forcing her not to. "I wish you were still here," she whispered. The old box of decorations sat half empty at her feet. Relics of past holidays she'd tried to avoid. Digging through it felt more like excavation than preparation. Near the bottom, something cold brushed her fingers. A small pocket watch cracked along the face. Daniel's. It was frozen at 11:58, the time of his death. Emily traced the hands of the watch with her thumb, hesitating for only a moment before winding it. A single tick echoed in the room. Her vision blurred, and the world dipped beneath her feet. She stumbled forward, clutching the mantle. When she looked at the clock on the wall, the time read midnight. 2. Emily woke to the sound of something sizzling in the kitchen. The sun cut across the wooden floor, spilling warmth she hadn't felt in years. She pushed herself up, rubbing her eyes. With surprise, she noticed she was still holding Daniel's watch in her hand tightly, as if someone else carefully passed it to her. Her attention shortly moved to her desk side. Her decorations in her room was changed. The old box of decorations on the floor was gone, replaced by a series of drawers. Her desk looked less messy. Her daily makeups and the mirror were gone. There was scent that didn't belong to her. Footsteps moved behind her. "Morning." It's a male voice. Her heart almost stopped beating. She turned slowly. Daniel stood in the kitchen, spatula in hand, flipping eggs as if this was the most natural thing in the world. The plate slipped from her fingers, shattering across the floor. Daniel glanced over his shoulder, frowning. "You all right?" he asked, stepping forward carefully. "You're acting weird." Emily couldn't breathe. Her legs shook beneath her, but she closed the distance between them, pulling him into a tight embrace. "Daniel," she choked out. You're here." Daniel stiffened for a second before hugging her back. "Where else would I be?" Tears streamed down Emily's face as she buried herself in the scent of him. A mixture of fresh soap and a scent just belonged to him only. No one else did. She could feel him gently tapping her back, but something was different. She pulled back to look at him. His eyes, warm but unfamiliar, lingered a little too long on her face. "I thought..." She shook her head, laughing through her tears. "I thought I lost you." Daniel chuckled softly. "You're not making any sense. Sit down. I made breakfast." She squeezed her cheek and quickly checked her phone screen. It said, Friday, 25th December. 3:03. The snow outside sparkled under the afternoon sun, but Emily barely noticed it. She trailed Daniel through the village, where decorations hung on every door. She had expected people to stare, to question why he was here, but no one said a word. As they passed a bakery, the old woman squinted at them through the window. Her hand paused mid-air as she hung a wreath, but she quickly looked away. Emily squeezed Daniel's arm. "Did you see that?" "See what?" "She was staring at us, like she'd seen a ghost." Daniel simply shrugged. Maybe she's not used to seeing you out and about, but Emily wasn't convinced. Was it? She was pretty sure she went there a lot. She even went there yesterday, and she said "Merry Christmas" to her before she left. Maybe she was just having a multi-layered dream that she could not easily wake up. If so, she hoped she would never wake up again. Later that evening, she sat on the sofa as Daniel strung lights around the tree. His humming filled the room, soft, rhythmic, but the tune was unfamiliar. "What's that song?" she asked, tilting her head. Daniel didn't stop. "My favorite Christmas song." Emily frowned. "No way. It's not. You always hated Christmas songs. You said your ear would get broken if you listened to them all the time like that." Like, Daniel paused, blinking. "Right," he said lightly. "Must have slipped my mind." But the humming resumed, louder this time. By the time night fell, Emily couldn't shake the weight in her chest. Something felt wrong. She climbed the stairs quietly, pausing by Daniel's room. The door was cracked open. Inside, Daniel sat at the edge of the bed, staring at the floor. He didn't notice her. His lips moved soundlessly, whispering something she couldn't hear. Emily leaned closer. "Daniel?" His head snapped toward her. For a moment, neither of them spoke. His eyes reflected the faint light from the hallway, dark and unreadable. "Can't sleep," he muttered, brushing past her as he slipped out. Emily stood frozen in the doorway. She glanced back at his room, at the photo resting on his nightstand. Her breath caught. The photograph was the same one from the mantel, but her face had been scratched out. Emily's hands trembled as she flipped through the old diary she'd found in the attic. The entries were hers, but she didn't remember writing them. The final entry read, "I miss him. Maybe if I wind the clock tonight, things will be different." The next page was blank. Footsteps sounded behind her. She turned sharply to see Daniel standing at the bottom of the attic stairs, the soft glow of the tree lights casting shadows across his face. "Looking for something?" he asked. "Why is my face scratched out of the photos?" Emily demanded, holding the diary close. "What's happening to me?" Daniel stepped forward slowly, his expression unreadable. "I didn't want to tell you," he said softly. "I thought it would be easier if you didn't remember." "Remember what?" Daniel's voice cracked as he said, "You didn't come back, Emily. Not completely." The diary slipped from her hands. "You died 5 years ago," Daniel whispered. "The same night as me." Emily stumbled back, the room spinning. Her reflection in the window, always faint, always delayed, finally faded to nothing. In the silence, Daniel placed the pocket watch on the floor. "I'm sorry," he said, "but you shouldn't be here." Emily couldn't remember when he got the watch. Even this morning, the watch was with her. She tried to open the window, to wake herself up. It's been a longest dream ever in her life. Then she noticed her hand slowly passed through the window frame. The snow fell quietly as Daniel stood in the graveyard, gazing at the headstone. Emily, beloved sister, died Christmas Eve 5 years ago. A single set of footprints trailed behind him in the snow, shattered truths. In week 52, the little town already shimmered with the anticipation of festivities. Strings of twinkling lights adorned street corners, their glow reflected in the frosted windows of small houses. The air was somehow alive with the scent of candied almonds, cinnamon, and vanilla, sweet bakeries waiting to be shared. Yet amidst this explosion of life and light, Henrik remained unmoved in his own house. Only now did he notice the splinters on the frames of the old windows. It irritated him. How could one have lived in a place for so long and never discover something as provocative as that? 30 years in the same house, married to a woman named Benta. She never had much interest in cleaning like most women her age had. Henrik looked up from the bed where he rested his body in the afternoon. Naps like these started to occur more often than before. Probably age, or hell knows why. The door was open, and he could see the light from the lamp in the kitchen. Very faint, but just enough to see clearly. When was the last time he changed the light bulbs? Or maybe the last time he did that? Maybe 4 years ago? Or 6? Henrik got up and walked around the house for a moment until he saw the old plates. Small teacups were there too. They had gathered dust over time. Why did she even collect them when she didn't even polish them? Wasn't that something you do when you collect all sorts of crap? Henrik took his box with pills and swallowed a handful of them with lukewarm water, and then grabbed his cigarette box. As the flame flickered to life and touched the tip of his cigarette, the first inhale hit him with a rush of warmth, pulling him out of the heavy fog of his sadness. The bittersweet wave of nostalgia washed over him, carrying flashes of his younger years, when the world was a vast, untamed promise, each day unwritten and brimming with possibilities. Now, every movement was deliberate, every breath a reminder of the disease that gripped his body, unraveling him piece by piece. The cigarette trembled in his unsteady fingers, a cruel contrast to the steady, unbroken rhythm of his past, when his hands had been strong and his future limitless. Henrik looked up at the cupboard with the plates. He no longer spared them a glance, knowing they wouldn't remain in his house much longer. The small glass doors of the cupboard did not bother to open. "Come on!" He got angry and used all his strength to open the cupboard until it gave out. Glass bounced and flew all over the place, and a small piece flew into his face. A second later, a small cup fell, adding china to the glass artwork on the ground. "Well," said Henrik, "Bente will take care of that." For a minute, Henrik wondered where she might be. But then a sudden thought struck him. Probably anyone with self-respect would be willing to spend more quality time away from his miserable presence. Carefully, as much as he could, Henrik took the plates and cups and put them down in a cardboard box. He put on his jacket and shoved the keys in the pocket of his leather jacket. It has been a few years since he didn't drive, not that he didn't know how to. So he headed walking, went out to Red Cross shop, and handed the ladies at the counter the filled cardboard box without saying a word. Henrik stepped out into the street and saw that it was beginning to get dark. He gave a sigh of relief, as if that particular china was a burden that added more weight to his heavy enough life. It was past 3 in the afternoon, and the clouds were long and transparent. When was the last time he went out for a walk? Not recently, for sure. It was too unbearable to look at all these energetic people. Energetic enough to laugh and move around, with no rollators, and accompanied by themselves only. Each step now felt like a quiet triumph. The rhythm of his feet against the pavement was a soothing reminder that, despite the tremors and stiffness, Henrik was still moving forward, and this helped to refresh his mind. The crisp air brushed against his face, and for a moment, the simple act of walking became a victory over the weight of his condition. After about 15 minutes, Henrik walked in the dark until he saw a neon sign. He had forgotten his glasses at home, but the word bodega was big enough to read. He entered in the cozy, time-worn charm. Its low beams and dimly lit interior soaked with the stories of decades past. Henrik used to come more often, but the last time he had beer in the bodega was when his son turned 18 and the whole family celebrated. Henrik looked around to choose a spot. Faded photographs and vintage beer ads adorned the smoke-stained walls, while mismatched chairs and well-worn tables lent the space some hygge-lig, unpretentious air. A faint aroma of beer mingled with the occasional smell of fried food, as locals leaned on the polished but scuffed wood counter, exchanging jokes over clinking glasses. Henrik felt strange. there was only a small group of people, and the whole room smelled of something naggingly recognizable. Henrik sat down next to a lone man. Both were silent. Only their bodies felt close enough to feel each other's hollowness. Jens could hear Kim's "in a little while" playing, and turned to the guy for some small talk. Aren't pleasantries often a way to save ourselves from being engulfed by awkward solitude? The man looked much younger. Henrik saw him drinking from a small porcelain cup, like the ones he just left off earlier. Funny, Henrik thought, and forced his eyes to focus more. He noted he wasn't a man at all. He was a teenage boy with tears in his eyes. "Are you okay, my boy?" "What's going on?" Henrik asked. The boy didn't answer, but turned around, revealing a deep gash reaching from his left shoulder to his lower back. Henrik's eyes widened. The boy stopped smiling, and his somber look turned into a empty expression. He collapsed to the ground with a heavy thud. Henrik noticed that the boy had a guars on the inside of his jacket. He grabbed it abruptly, without anyone noticing. Henrik didn't have his phone with him, so he asked one of the people in the bar to call the police and pointed to the body. When Henrik opened the door, the wind blew in his face. Rain poured in, and the weather was completely different from just a couple of minutes ago. The sky was entirely black, and the sounds of screams were coming from the distance. Henrik was following the wails, not actually sure where he was heading to. He had almost reached home when he saw two individuals in front of his neighbor's house. They looked like thieves, and when he fixed his gaze, he saw they had weapons in their hands and looked dangerous. They were murderers. Henrik stepped back and was about to hide behind a large willow tree when they noticed him. Henrik took the boy's gun and readied to fire. To his surprise, the gun was empty, and he panicked. Henrik could hear his own snorting breath over the wind. He couldn't run. He couldn't hide. So he just sat quietly on the ground, putting the gun down in despair. Henrik saw a red car driving up the dirt road. It stopped so suddenly that it skidded and slid into the nearby ditch. Henrik felt the weight of his decisions and his fractured memories pressing down on him. His life had been a blur of rancor, loneliness, and regret. But now it was ending in chaos while the sirens grew louder and armed men scooted closer. The middle-aged woman who came with the red car, Bente, rushed toward Henrik, screaming at the officers who found an unarmed ill man announced missing. "You're late," Henrik muttered, closing his eyes and lying on the grass. But now it seemed she didn't hear him. He got lost twice last week. Again, without the phone. Everything started to fall apart after we lost our young love. uttered Benta through tears while they were lifting Henrik and heading to the ambulance. The two people, his neighbors, helped Benta to collect a few scattered pieces of china, and no one knew why Henrik had a porcelain loop handle around his ring finger. Paranoia. It was a cold November evening. Rain was showering on the street, creating a constant background noise. People ran from cover to cover, and residents of the building gathered near the window, admiring the incredible scenery outside. Except for Carl. Carl spent what seemed like an eternity examining his mug. His favorite mug, the mug he had for several years. Yet there was something strange with it. Using something for a long time, you remember small things about it. Little cracks, stains, tiny pieces of something edible that was stuck near the handle. It was there, but something was wrong. Just like if someone bought a brand new mug and, "Hey, Carl, are you all right?" Jesus Christ. Carl got frightened and turned around, convulsively trying to control his hands and not to break anything. The mysterious voice belonged to his friend, Conrad, who stood in his kitchen with an anxious expression and a bottle of wine. Yes, I'm all right. It's just... Wait. How did you get into my apartment? You gave me the spare keys, remember? Conrad put the bottle on a table and proceeded with the conversation. Are you sure you are all right? You look really concerned about something. I mean, people in your profession always look concerned, but today, it's a bit too much. What's going on? Yeah, no, it's nothing serious. Carl got 2 wine glasses in the kitchen and proceeded to sit at the table while trying to express his concerns. It's just my mug. It doesn't look right. Your mug? Conrad was visibly surprised. The one you have from college? The only thing that's not right about it is that I remember you holding your mug more than holding your ex-wife. I mean, that's why we got divorced. Carl laughed. Not because of the mug, obviously, but you get the point. Carl realized he had forgotten about a wine opener and went to the kitchen to get it, while continuing his speech. The point is, it's not like it should be. It's hard to explain. Something is not right. Maybe it's a little cleaner than usual, but something else is off too. That happens to mugs when they get cleaned, Conrad said, trying to play it as a joke, but looking really concerned. Are you saying what I think you are saying? The room was silent for a moment. Carl was deep into his thoughts and unsure if he wanted to discuss it. But there is no better person to share his fears than Conrad. I mean, Carl began hesitantly. You know the country we live in, with all the secret police and repressions and all this stuff. What if they are spying on me? You are right about a country we live in. Conrad ate an olive and continued. And you know much better than I do about all the people that fell into paranoia and lost themselves in madness. No one was watching them. And no one is watching you, Carl. You just forgot that you washed the mug. Don't do this to yourself. Yeah, I guess you are right. I'm seriously, Carl. Don't do this to yourself. This country already lost too many good men to paranoia. We cannot lose you too. You are right. And I really mean it. Carl and Conrad smiled at each other and started the dinner. While you age, you tend to lose your friends. Not because something is wrong with you or with them, at least mostly, but because life drives you apart. You begin to work. They begin to work. You start a family. They start a family. Suddenly, you don't see each other anymore. You hardly know what is happening in each other's lives. And all your conversations are mostly wishing each other a Merry Christmas. That was not the case for Carl and Conrad. They were there for each other for as long as they can remember. They finished school together, lived together through college, and helped each other in all ways possible. Conrad was there when Carl got married and divorced. Even when they started to drift apart, they made a deal to gather every 2 weeks to drink some wine and catch up on what was going on in their lives. Carl knew he could trust Conrad and didn't lie when he said he would abandon all that spy paranoia. At least, he thought that. Soon after Conrad left, Carl poured himself some tea in the mug, the one that almost drove him crazy, went to his cabinet, and opened some documents he was working on. He opened a file, took a sip of tea, and wanted to start the work, but he still hesitated. He could not stop staring at the mug. Obviously, Conrad was right. The mug was the same as always. But Carl could not stop thinking that someone bought a new mug and tried to recreate the original one with cracks and stains. Was it paranoia? Certainly. But Carl knew one thing. He must do something to find out, or his mind will never be at peace again. That night, Carl put away his documents, finished the tea, and went to sleep. The following day, he bought a camera and hid it in the cabinet. If someone was there spying on him, they would return to the apartment. Days passed, and Carl sat in his cabinet each evening and watched videotapes from his camera. Nothing. Day after day, week after week. He did not tell Conrad anything about it, so as to not disappoint his friend. He knew that it was not healthy to do something like that to yourself, but he couldn't stop. He promised to monitor it for a month or a month and a half, and then stop. It was almost the deadline, if not counting the ones Carl already moved to later. He understood that he slowly lost control over his paranoia and knew that it must come to an end. One more time. That's it. Carl committed to watching the very last tape from this camera, and there was nothing. Again. But something was off. Carl replayed the tape again and noticed what was bothering him. The timestamp skipped 3 seconds once. It may have been just a manufacturer error or problems with the power supply. But Carl still wanted to check for something. If he was right, someone might have erased part of the tape. In that case, they knew where the camera was because they saw how Carl hid it. He took his flashlight and tested it against his camera. Light reflected on the lenses and created small flares. If he was being watched, his apartment must contain other cameras. Carl knew that he was too deep into his paranoia, but could not resist himself. After all, if he found out he was right, that's not paranoia. He started flashing his apartment, inch by inch. He couldn't find anything until he saw a flare in a bookshelf. He put his hands on the shelf and tried to find what caused this flare. His hands touched something, and his heart skipped a beat. There was another camera. He rushed to his desk to watch the tape on a newly found camera. His hands shook, and his mind could not focus on a single thought. He finally had proof that he was right all the time. Nevertheless, it took him much courage to activate the camera. He would have to live with whatever was there for the rest of his life. But he knew that there was no other choice. The tape was on. Carl first noticed a person changing the SD card on a camera. It seemed like a regular procedure, and Carl could not wait to see who this man was. A second later, the villain revealed his face. It was Conrad. Carl could not believe what he saw. Conrad, his best friend, was a secret police officer, and he was spying on Carl. The tape went on as Conrad took Carl's camera and started editing it. This is why there was nothing on the camera before. But it took just one mistake for everything to be revealed. Then Conrad found the documents Carl was working on, took some notes in his textbook, put everything in its place, and left. Carl was shaking. He could not breathe normally and started crying. Conrad. Out of everyone, Conrad, his best friend, the only person he could trust. All these years, everything they went through, all the time they helped each other live through the worst moments of their lives, were now void. Nothing. Just a lie. Carl was heartbroken. He didn't know what to do, and wasn't even sure if he wanted to live anymore. He felt like all his life had been a giant lie. No, it's not how it should end. One thing that jerk was right about is that this country could not lose Carl, too. It was hard and tough. But he had to do something right now. First, Carl scouted the house to find more cameras. There was one in the bedroom and one in the living room. Now, it's time for action. Two can play this game, and Conrad just lost a huge advantage. Now Carl knows he is being watched. First, Carl edited the footage from the found cameras. Now he knew exactly where they were, and how to hide what should not be found. He didn't want to look too suspicious, though. Sometimes he left some clues, usually useless, so that he would not be detected. As for Conrad, Carl made sure he did not suspect anything. As hard as it was, the two continued their tradition of gathering every 2 weeks. Carl had to put all his willpower to use to not punch his friend in the face. Sometimes he skipped the wine party for made-up reasons, but always edited the videotapes accordingly. One evening, when they sat at the table, Carl said the one thing he had planned for a long time. "Hey, Conrad, I want to show you something I was working on. Just promise to keep the secret, all right? It might cause big problems if anybody knows, except for us." The call scene. A rainy evening. Thunder rumbles in the distance as rain taps steadily against the window of a modest apartment. The dim lighting casts long, restless shadows across the room. The faint flicker of a nearby street lamp seeps through the blinds, adding a melancholic glow to the space. A landline phone rings, sharp and intrusive, cutting through the ambient rain pattern. Sitting on her worn couch with a half-read book resting on her lap, Claire stiffens. She glances at the phone, her heart thumping at the unexpected sound, as if it doesn't fit into her tranquil evening. After a moment's hesitation, she picks it up. "Claire, hello?" The line crackles faintly, followed by a pause so long it feels static. Then, a calm and deliberate voice speaks. "Stranger, is this 555-3248? Claire. "Yes, who is this?" The voice carries a weight that makes her sit up straighter. "Stranger, you don't know me, but I must talk to you." Claire frowns, her grip on the receiver tightening. Her free hand instinctively brushes the edge of her book, the texture grounding her in an unreal moment. Her eyes dart to the rain-speckled window, searching for a reason and context to anchor the odd exchange. "Claire, I think you have the wrong number, stranger." "No, Claire, I don't." Her name hits her like a sharp slap, causing her breath to catch. The stranger's calm, steady tone unnerves her. A chill creeps up her spine as she glances around the small apartment. The corners of the room seem darker now, with the shadows stretching like tendrils toward her. "Claire, pause. How do you know my name, stranger?" "That's not important. What matters is that you listen to me. You're not safe." Her mind races. 1,000 explanations surge forward, each more implausible than the last. Her voice wavers, though she forces an edge of firmness into her tone. "Claire," sharply. "Excuse me?" Her grip on the receiver tightens, and her knuckles whiten. An involuntary tremor beneath her surface betrays the facade of control she's trying to project. "Stranger, please, just listen." There's no time to explain everything. You need to leave your apartment now. Don't pack a bag. Don't waste a second. Just go. Claire blinks, her mind catching onto the sheer absurdity of the command. She lets out a nervous laugh, though it sounds hollow even to her ears. Claire. Okay, seriously. Who put you up to this? Was it Nina? She's always pulling this kind of stranger. This isn't a joke, Claire. The voice pierces her deflection with a sharp edge. Thunder crashes outside, shaking the windows and masking the sound of her sharp inhale. Claire stands instinctively, the book falling from her lap. Her bare feet press against the cold hardwood floor, grounding her again in the surreal moment. Claire, voice rising. I don't know who you are, but, stranger, interrupting. Look out your window. Her heartbeat quickens. She hesitates, clutching the receiver as though it's the only thing tethering her to reality. Slowly, she moves to the window, her hand shaking as she pulls back the blinds. The street below is drenched in the rain, but her eyes immediately land on a figure standing across the street, motionless under the flickering light of a street lamp. Their face is obscured by a hood, their silhouette unnervingly still. Claire's breath catches as the figure tilts its head, as though she is aware she is watching. Stranger. Now, do you believe me? Claire stumbles back from the window, her heart pounding. The receiver trembles in her hand. Her voice is a hoarse whisper. Claire. Who is that, stranger? Someone who shouldn't be there. Leave. Now, Claire glances toward the door of her apartment, her mind spinning with questions. The shadows in the room seem to deepen, pressing in around her. She feels the weight of the stranger's words. The urgency is unmistakable. Her instincts scream at her to move, but fear roots her in place. The voice cuts through her attempt at humor, sudden and sharp, freezing her mid-sentence. Stranger. I wouldn't call if it weren't serious. Claire, snapping. I don't even know who you are. Why would I trust anything you're saying? Stranger. I've been watching and know about the black car parked across the street. Claire's emotions become numb. Earlier, she had barely noticed the car, attributing it to a neighbor's visitor or someone sheltering from the rain. Now, the memory of its presence sharpens, and her hands shake as she edges toward the window. Her voice drops to a whisper. Claire, how do you... Stranger. It's been there for hours, hasn't it? 2 men inside. They're waiting for something or someone. The stranger's words weigh her down, causing her to hesitate. Slowly, she reaches for the curtain, pulling it back just enough to see. Her heart hammers as her gaze locks onto the sleek black car parked beneath the flickering street lamp. The rain cascades off its hood, dark windows like mirrors, revealing nothing of what lies inside. Her breath catches in her throat, her voice trembling as she forces the question out. Claire, voice trembling. Who are they, stranger? Not friends. That's all you need to know. Her stomach twists. Her mind races, trying to make sense of the situation. She looks back at the car as though staring long enough will unlock some clue to their presence. The thought of being watched targets claws at her sanity. Claire, hoarse whisper. Why would they be watching me, stranger? You have something they want. Or maybe someone you know does. It doesn't matter. People perceive you as a solitary figure. Her vision blurs with rising panic. She steps back from the window, her hand gripping the curtain, as though it's the only thing keeping her upright. Her eyes dart around the apartment, scanning the familiar clutter. Her jacket slung over a chair, an unopened stack of mail on the kitchen counter, and the half-empty glass of wine on the table, as if the answer might be hiding there. But nothing makes sense. Claire, frantic. I don't understand. I'm just an office manager. I don't. Stranger, interrupting, firm. Claire, focus. You're wasting time. Leave now. Take the fire escape. Don't use the front door. Her head spins. The idea of fleeing overwhelms her senses. Rain drums against the window, matching the frantic beat of her heart. She stumbles toward the couch, snatching up her phone and keys, her voice rising in a desperate plea. Claire, shaking her head. And go where, stranger? Anywhere but there. Head toward the train station. Don't stop until you're in a crowded place. She freezes, gripping the phone tightly, her knuckles white. Her voice drops to a whisper, tears threatening to spill. Claire, choking. I don't know if I can trust you. The line goes silent for a beat, but when the voice returns, it's colder, steelier, a warning, laced with urgency. Stranger, you don't have to trust me, but if you stay, they will come inside, and they won't knock. The words struck her deeply. A fresh wave of fear courses through her as a sound cuts through the rain. A distant car door shutting. Claire's breath hitches. She turns back to the window, pulling the curtain aside just enough to see a shadowy figure step out of the black car. Another figure follows, their movements deliberate and synchronized. One figure adjusts their coat, and for a fleeting moment, she notices the gleam of something metallic at their side. Stranger, urgently. Claire, go now. Her breath tightens in her throat. The phone slips from her hand, clattering onto the table as adrenaline takes over. She bolts for the window, leading to the fire escape, fumbling with the latch. The rain hisses against the glass, and the faint hum of voices from the street grows louder. She freezes as a sharp knock echoes from the front door. It's noisy, firm, and final. The sound reverberates through the apartment like a countdown. Stranger. From the fallen receiver. Faint. Don't look back. Just run. The rain outside grows heavier, drumming against the window, as if urging her to act. Claire stands paralyzed, her feet rooted to the floor, and her mind caught between disbelief and the suffocating weight of fear. Claire, growing frantic, picking up the phone. Wait. I need more than this. I need answers. Who are you? How do you know all of this? There's a long pause on the other end. The silence is so profound that she can hear her shaky breaths. When the voice returns, it's softer, almost regretful. Stranger. Someone who owes you a debt. A big one. Claire, confused. A debt? I don't even know you. Stranger. You don't remember, but you saved my life once. And now, I'm saving yours. Her thoughts whirl, memories colliding in her mind like shattered glass. Fragments of the past flash before her. Small acts of kindness, fleeting interactions with strangers. But then, one moment stands out. Years ago, she pulled an injured man out of a wrecked car on a rainy night like this one. The metallic tang of blood, the desperate sound of his gasps, and her trembling hands pressed against his wound until paramedics arrived. His face, pale and bleeding, swims into focus in her mind. Claire, voice shaking. Is this about that car accident? Were you? Stranger, firmly. There's no time for questions. Go now, Claire. I'll call you again when it's safe. The phone clicks, the line going dead. The finality of the sound lingers in her ears. Claire stands frozen, the receiver still pressed to her ear, her knuckles white. She flinches as a crack of thunder rattles the windows. Slowly, she lowers the phone, her eyes drifting back to the window. The black car remains motionless, but now a faint glow of a cigarette flares inside. Her chest tightens as she stares at the tiny ember, an ominous beacon in the darkness. Claire, to herself, whispering, "What the hell is going on?" Suddenly, a faint creak from the hallway shatters the silence. Her heart leaps into her throat, her breath catching. She spins toward the sound, her eyes wide and searching. The noise could be anything. The old building settling, a neighbor, but now it feels like a warning. The hairs on her arms rise, and instinct takes over. She grabs her jacket and keys from the couch, her movements hurried and clumsy. Without a second thought, she moves to the window. The rain lashes at the glass, its icy touch shocking her as she forces the stubborn frame open. The fire escape looms outside, a slick, glistening path into the storm. Climbing through, the cold rain instantly soaks her, plastering her hair to her face. The metal beneath her feet is treacherous, every step a gamble. She grips the railing tightly, her knuckles aching as she descends. Below her, the black car suddenly roars to life. The headlights snap on, slicing through the downpour. She catches her breath. A door slams, and a tall, shadowy figure steps out. Their movements are purposeful and unhurried. Claire doesn't wait to see more. She runs, her feet slipping on the slick fire escape as she reaches the ground. The rain blurs her vision, each drop like a needle against her skin. Her breath is ragged, her pulse pounding in her ears. Behind her, the unmistakable sound of footsteps splashing in the water. Pools echoes through the narrow alley. The sound is steady and deliberate. A voice, not the stranger's, pierces the storm with a low, menacing call. Voice: Claire, stop. You can't run forever. The words twist in her mind, each syllable heavy with malice. She doesn't look back. Every instinct screams at her to keep moving. She darts into an alley, her feet slipping on the wet concrete. The flickering street lamps overhead cast eerie shadows that seemed to chase her. Although the train station isn't far away, every step feels like a lifetime. Her muscles burn, her lungs ache, but she pushes forward, the stranger's voice echoing in her mind. Stranger's voice in her mind. You're not safe. As the rain intensifies, so does her determination. Each crack of thunder feels like a countdown. Each shadow is a threat. She is confident that she cannot stop. Whatever this is, whatever danger is hunting her, standing still means death. And Claire isn't ready to die. And the flash: You're lucky to be alive, Mr. Henderson. They all told me that. Every doctor, nurse, and specialist that came into my hospital room. God, I remember that much. And they weren't wrong. I had flew right out of the windshield of my buddy Dave's car. I hardly remember the night or the accident, but I know we had been drinking, and he was driving. We crashed into another driver at an intersection. No one else survived. I remember waking up the next morning to the beeping of a heart monitor. I remember the look on my wife Rachel's face, her eyes swollen and red from crying, and her telling me over and over again how she thought she was going to lose me. She wasn't in the car with us, and I was thankful for that, because that's the day she told me she was pregnant with our first. I truly was lucky to be alive, and I swore up and down to her that day that I was going to be the husband she deserved. We had hardly been married a year at that point, and I had already messed up so much. But that day, I changed. I made it my life goal for Rachel to always know how much I loved and appreciated her. I went out on less guys' nights and let her go out for more girls' nights. I helped clean the house and cooked dinner on days she worked late. When our second child was born, I took time off work to be with her and help her. When a promotion for her meant more hours, I quit my job to stay home with the kids while she built her career. And I loved every minute of it. Watching the kids grow up into people gave me so much joy. I knew how lucky I was. But when Rachel would come home after a long day to a hot meal waiting on the table for her, and hearing her say, "How did I get so lucky, Sean?" Nothing beats that. My family meant the world to me, and anything I could do to make their lives better made me happy. When the kids, Leah and Robbie, got a bit older, and both were in elementary school, I decided it was time for me to go back to work. I took a job in construction, building things with my hands. Work I could be proud of. It paid off, too, because over the years, I was able to renovate our own home. It was a slow process, doing it myself, one room at a time. At one point, I was sure Rachel was going to divorce me. When the back patio project took a bit longer than I had anticipated and left us without a back door for a couple weeks. But she sure has enjoyed the backyard since then. Their smiles were all I needed to keep going with these projects. Leah got her own ensuite bathroom. For Robbie, a gaming den in the basement. And Rachel had her dream kitchen. 10 years after we bought the house, it looked completely different. I was proud of the life, the family, and the home I had built. I truly was the luckiest man alive. Or so I thought, until the headaches started. The first one happened one evening when I was making dinner. It was just Robbie and I home. Rachel was working late, and Leah was at rehearsals for her high school's play. I was making my famous coq au vin, a dish that took a while to prepare, since I had the extra time. Robbie was sitting at the island doing his homework, so he had to witness the whole thing. I had turned on the oven light so I could take a peek inside, which I guess triggered it. I remember thinking the light was so bright, brighter than usual. And then, nothing. I blacked out. It was only for a couple minutes, but it was enough to spook poor Robbie. I could hear him shouting, "Dad! Dad!" I got up off the floor and reassured him that I was okay. Later, during dinner, when we were discussing what had happened, I could see that Rachel was concerned. She wanted me to go see the doctor, but I insisted I was fine. She made the kids, and I promise that if this ever happened again, we'd call an ambulance, or at least make a doctor's appointment. The second time it happened, it was maybe about 6 weeks later. I was at a job site, and a coworker turned on a floodlight. I could see it getting brighter, and this time I heard a blaring noise, but couldn't make out where it was coming from. Everything went black, and I could hear him shouting my name. He told me I was out for only around 5 or 10 minutes. Again, I insisted I was fine, but my boss gave the rest of the day off anyway and told me to take the following day, too, if I needed it. Not wanting to worry Rachel, I chose not to tell her about it. And like an idiot, I didn't make a doctor's appointment. I went to work the next day and felt great. It was a few months before it happened again. And this time, I couldn't hide it from Rachel because she was there when it happened. It was late. The kids were in bed, and Rachel and I were in the living room. We had just finished watching a movie, and she got up to turn on the lamp. I could hear her talking about the movie, but I was fixated by the light. It got brighter, and I was trying to figure out if it had just moved, or if it was my imagination when the noise started. "What is that noise?" I tried to ask her, but I don't know if all the words came out before it all went black again. When I came back to, Rachel was already on the phone with an ambulance dispatcher. I managed to calm her down enough to agree that the ambulance wasn't necessary, on the condition that I would call our doctor the next morning to make an appointment. Luckily, the dispatcher was on my side, or else I don't think she would have went for it. As promised, I called to make an appointment first thing the next morning. It was scheduled for less than a week away, but I didn't make it until then, before it happened for the last time. All I remember is waking up in the middle of the road and not being able to see anything except bright headlights from a car. My ears were ringing, and the sound of the car horn was fading in and out. I think I heard an ambulance siren and someone calling my name before blacking out again, but it was hard to be sure. When I woke up again, I was in a hospital bed. There was a woman sitting in a chair who looked angry, or maybe annoyed, and it wasn't until she spoke that I even realized it was Rachel. She looked different. Her hair was darker and shorter. I thought I must have been in a coma for a while, and she let her roots grow in. "Welcome back," she told me, but her welcome didn't sound warm. I asked her if I had been in a coma, and she laughed a little before quickly suppressing it. "No, Sean, you were not in a coma." "Ah, Mr. Henderson, there you are." A nurse bustled into the room. "I hope you'll stay with us this time." "What?" I looked at Rachel, who just stared at me, emotionless. "You've been in and out, mostly out, of consciousness for a few hours now," the nurse explained. "Your wife is a lucky lady to still have you here. The luckiest girl alive," Rachel responded, deadpanned. The nurse didn't seem to notice Rachel's lack of enthusiasm and went on to tell me that there were no broken bones or anything major beyond some bruising, and I could likely go home the following morning. Going home is when things really started to not make sense. For one, none of the renovations were done. It was like it was when we first bought it, which prompted me to ask Rachel if I had a job. "You're joking, right?" She laughed, but didn't answer the question. I was starting to wonder if I had somehow traveled back in time. But my hypothesis was debunked when Robbie came in the front door. He looked about the same as I remembered, except that there was about another 20 pounds of him. He asked Rachel if she could drive him to hockey practice. "You play hockey?" I asked him. Yeah. Mom told me about your accident, but said you were okay. You don't have amnesia or anything, do you?" No, not to worry, Robbie. I'm doing fine. Just a little fuzzy." "Cool," he nodded. "It's just Rob now, though. Mom, are you ready to go? I'm going to be late." "Where is your sister?" I asked, but quickly remembered she probably had rehearsals. "Who knows?" Rachel sighed. "Probably off with that scumbag boyfriend of hers again. I hate that kid's face. He's such a loser. I don't know what she even sees in him. Let's go, Rob. Boyfriend. I mumbled to myself as the door closed behind them, leaving me behind in a house that didn't feel like my own. What kind of alternate reality am I in? Am I dreaming? Is this a prank? When no one came out from behind a fake wall with cameras, I decided that it was not, in fact, a prank, and that I needed to look to information, clues, something to tell me just what in the heck was going on here. It was getting dark, and I hadn't found anything except our legitimate birth certificates, tucked away in an old photo album. Some memories I had, and others I didn't. I decided to cook up a quick pasta for everyone, but Rachel and Robbie, or Rob, stopped for burgers on their way home, and Leah didn't get in until hours later. When I asked her where she'd been, she just gave me a look and went upstairs. "Why didn't you back me up?" I asked Rachel. "It's not worth the energy to argue with her," she responded without looking up from her phone. "I went for a walk to try to clear my head, which didn't work. And when I came back, Rachel was already in bed. I don't know if she was sleeping or just pretending to not notice when I slid under the blanket beside her and said goodnight. In the morning, I got up before everyone else and made breakfast, a feeble attempt to make things normal. Robbie, or Rob, was the only one who seemed to appreciate it. "Oh, sweet," he said, loading a plate with enough bacon, eggs, and pancakes to feed an orphanage. Leah nibbled on a piece of toast, and Rachel just sipped her coffee, looking unimpressed. "Okay, off to school. I can't drive you today. I have a meeting." "Ugh, again, Mom," Leah whined. "I hate public transit. People who take the bus are disgusting. If you want me to take you, then we have to leave now." "I can take you," I offered, feeling semi-confident in my ability to drive during my current confused state. How are you going to drive if Mom has the car?" She narrowed her eyes at me. I hadn't given any thought about whether I still had my truck. Trying to ignore her attitude, I changed the subject. "So when is your play?" I didn't miss it Did I? What play? The one you're in at school? What is it again? Annie? Or was that last year? It's Matilda this year, right? Oh, you mean the school's stupid play? I know you. Like, hit your head or whatever. But you seriously thought I'm one of those theater nerd kids? She tossed her half-eaten toast on the table and walked away. I'll be in the car. Good one, Dad, Rob B. said, shoveling the rest of what was on his plate into his mouth with a fork. You get in the car, too, Rachel told him, pouring her coffee into a travel mug. Rob B. grabbed his backpack and headed out. Wait, I called after Rachel before she left the room. What is happening here? Everything is different, but no one else seems to think so, and you don't even seem upset that I was just in an accident. She rolled her eyes. Upset? I was upset the first time, Sean. But I'm on to you now. If you want to leave this family, then do it. But don't tell me that I'm the one who's different. And for God's sake, don't be such a coward. What are you talking about? Now I was really confused. What do you mean the first time? When I was in the accident with Dave, before the kids. You weren't in an accident before the kids were born. Oh my God, I can't do this again. Right now, I'm going to be late. She turned to leave, but I grabbed her arm. Tell me, I demanded. You really don't remember? She scoffed. I loosened my grip, and she jerked away from me. A couple months ago, you started talking about going back and drove our car into a tree. Seemed like an accident at the time, but now I can see you were really trying to off yourself. Pretty sure that's what this is all about now, too. I just blinked at her. I didn't know what to say or think. She straightened her jacket and lifted her purse over her shoulder. Look, Sean, I don't know what's going on with you, and frankly, I just don't have the energy anymore. You need to get help. You think you aren't where you're supposed to be, and I get that. I do. But you have to accept that this is your life, and it's what you make it. She sighed heavily, and I could feel her exasperation. So today's story has come to an end. Or perhaps it never really ended. There are mysteries still there, questions still unanswered, and sometimes things that seem to only exist in stories can creep into reality in unexpected ways. Are you sure that when you turn off the sound, everything around you will still be normal as before? Or is there something watching you? Either way, always remember that these are just stories, or at least we want to believe that they are. If you like moments of suspense, tension, and breathlessness, don't forget to follow me so you don't miss the next stories. And next time, when you come back, make sure you are ready, because what awaits you may be even scarier than you thought. See you again if you still have the courage to continue listening.